Or did they force you to take them?
No, in a rare lapse of
No.
consciousness.
Or did they force you to take them?
In a rare lapse of long delay.
What happened?
Okay. Happiness.
Okay. No, it seems to be okay again. I think it's the green arrow on the right. There we go. There you are. All right, it is 6:30 and I'm going to start this meeting. Let's stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. First item on the agenda is the roll call. Can we have roll call, please? Ruben? Or whoever's doing it, Sam? Somebody
Mayor Bachran,
present?
Trustee Markle, Trustee Knudsen,
Here.
Trustee Smith,
Here.
Trustee Valentine,
Here.
Trustee Stelter,
Here.
Trustee McInnes.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. We can continue then. Next item is correspondence received. I wanted to thank especially the fourth graders at NIFSIS for sending us all those wonderful letters. And that if we ever want to find out what the kids in this town want from the town, we should ask the school to have an essay contest and have them send us what they want. I think that's a brilliant suggestion. And now we know community garden in Apple Park and a bike pump track.
And community garden, I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, so we have some great suggestions from them. So thank you guys. Well done.
They wanted activities that kept kids off the streets.
Yeah.
Yes, please. All right. So is there anything in the correspondence received that the board would like to act on? Okay, seeing nothing, then we're going to move on with the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
Discussion? Yes.
I'd like to ask for a change to the agenda, and that would be to put the trustee reports much higher on the agenda, simply because the personnel committee has a pretty important report about our finalists that I didn't see on the agenda.
Okay, well, I was going to announce them under announcements.
Okay,
Yeah.
but, and then remember to ask for.
Yes.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
okay, then never mind.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next announcements. So there is an open seat on the planning commission. And so we'd like to ask for letters of interest for the planning commission. And please send them in by the next meeting so that we can have an appointment at the next board meeting. So just send them into Town of Helium or walk them into the door, whatever. And that is a 2-year term? Yes.
I just wonder if you could tell us who is stepping down.
Monica Fogel.
Okay, not because her term is ended.
Oh, yeah, her term has.
Oh, okay.
She's been on for a very long time.
Okay.
And she just finally said, yeah, enough. The other thing I'd like to announce is that Highway 133 is going to be open early next week. They're finally going to get the bridge done early next week. So hallelujah, it's going to be done. Thank you, CDOT. And then the other thing is we finished our interviews for our preliminary candidates and have come up with 4 finalists. And those finalists are Kevin Flanagan, Angela Lawrence, Stephen Wynn, Patrick Marsh. They are going to be coming here. They're flying into town on the 19th. We will be doing the tour of the town and several other things on the 20th, and then having the open house and meet and greet with the citizens of Paonia the evening of the 20th. We're going to do it a little differently than we did last time, and we're asking for the citizens of the town to submit questions that they would like the candidates to answer. And we will bring those questions to the candidates, but we're going to ask for those questions ahead of time. So if you would please, again, email them, walk them into the town. There will be slips of paper at the back at the beginning of the meet and greet. You can write your questions down. Yes, Dave.
And when will their resumes be posted so people can think about questions they want to ask?
We'll get them up on the website, probably depending on, probably tomorrow, if you can do that, Ruben.
And I'd like to make a correction. We were not gonna allow people to have
Oh,
questions on the spot because it was too much to try to do it on the fly with, Leslie is gonna be our MC for that part of the meet and greet, and it's just too much to try to read through comments when you're about to start.
All right, so I am corrected. So please put your questions in ahead of time, and then we will get them going.
Could I just do?
Yeah, please go.
Well, where do you want people to email them? Should they email them?
Paonia, townofpaonia.com.
Is somebody reading those emails?
Yeah,
Great, thank you. That wasn't always the case.
right,
Thank you.
yeah, but it is now being read, so.
Thanks.
Right, and so again, you can walk them through the door, you can email them to the town, write a letter, send them to the town, we'll snail mail. I mean, the old things still work. All right, does anyone else have an announcement that they would like to make? We also had 2 wonderful letters that have been passed out to the board, and I would also like to do a kudo myself. I had friends in town over the weekend. And as they were leaving town, there was an incident that happened that the police responded to. And these people have not had good interactions with the police in Albuquerque, where they have come from. And our chief of police was first on the scene. And when I talked to them afterwards, they just sang the praises of our police department. It was handled beautifully. And not only were they handled well, but the actual perpetrator was treated with dignity and respect as well. And they appreciated that as well. So thank you, Chief Lamenter, both you and your staff for your wonderful response. So we have got just an amazing crew of people working for this town right now. All right, anything else? Okay, all right, so then we're going to move on to public comment. This is for anyone to address the board on a subject that is not included on the agenda. There is a 3-minute time limit, and direct all comments to the mayor. No responses are going to be made by the staff or board during this time, and no derogatory or demeaning statements or public displays. Please be respectful at all times. Would anyone like to address the board on something that is not on the agenda? Yes, Mr. Brewer.
So is there no longer a board we can see with the people attending by Zoom or
Yeah,
something?
Ruben will get that set up.
Oh,
He
okay.
just, yeah.
So Madam Mayor, I take great interest in seeing in the minutes of the packet tonight, you will approve a very detailed account of the cowardly 25-minute romp on Bruner session that you guys had during your private meeting when I didn't have the opportunity to weigh in on my own behalf. I think it's interesting that it's in such great detail. It shows your cowardice and ignorance in great detail.
Mr. Bernard.
I'm exercising my constitutional rights here, and you're just gonna have to listen, Madam Mayor, or you can have me removed from the meeting, and we'll see where it goes from there. Okay, the charges against me are false. You have set up a straw man thing where you've taken advantage of a person who's not present to misconstrue and falsify and overblow a lot of things with no actual evidence presented. And one of the things I love the most about the detailed account is the ignorance of that some board member wouldn't read my email because it was ex parte communication, while you have other board members who have vowed to only consider contact of the same nature. And none of you have any idea what it actually means. And that your staff, your administrator and your attorney sit there and let these kinds of misconceptions go down silently implicates them too. And then there's the two registered letters I got from the attorney and the administrator. And, you know, I was leaving them out of my charge of incompetence, but if those letters represent their true understanding of the rights and responsibilities of a citizen, they too are incompetent. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bernard. Would anyone else like to address the board on an item that is not on the agenda? Yes, Ms. Watson.
Hello. I'd like to make an observation here. Looking at the agenda, there are numerous items that deal with downtown. Business owners, the setup of downtown, what's happening downtown. I know last year there were several issues that came before the board that had to do with downtown, closing the streets for events and such. I think it's time for some downtown planning instead of this piecemeal consideration of different parties coming in asking for things. I think it's time to say, how are we using the downtown now? How would we like it to develop into the future? And let's hear from all the business owners. Let's collaborate on this so we can get a really good thing happening here. You know, so you hear from people who are in favor, who aren't, how it's going to affect businesses. So instead of just one by one addressing issues, that's not good planning. I'd like to see a downtown plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Watson. Anyone else like to address the board with something that's not on the agenda? All right, seeing none, let's move on to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Motion to accept the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All right, seeing yes. Ms. Smith?
I have a question about the special events permits at the very end,
Sure.
the Cherry Base and the BMW rally.
Yeah,
Can I go ahead? Is anybody
yes,
else?
please.
The question I had was, if I read it correctly, it looked like the banner permit was waived and the street closure permit, the banner permit fee was waived and the street closure permit fee was waived. And I don't recall us approving waiving those fees when we chose to waive the fees for the use of town park. So for the 4 legacy events, I don't recall us waiving fees for these 2 events, for the banner or for the street closure. And was that somehow done in the past?
Madam Mayor, can I address that?
Yes, Ms. Vetter, please do.
Sorry, I can't figure out how to raise my hand. I didn't mean to be rude.
Okay.
Actually, Trustee Smith, I thought the same thing when I first looked through the packet, but when I went through and did the stuff, the only thing that was left out of the check was the park fees. I actually made it really clear to the 4 events when they came in that it was only park fees. So it is paid in full. He did pay for the banner permit. He did the street closure. It was only the park fees that were waived. It just looks confusing in there. I apologize.
Okay, it was confusing because it looked as though it was said waived across both of those, but they were not. They
were not. I did the calculations to double check and everything but the park fees was paid.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right. We have a motion to accept the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Next, we have staff reports. Interim Direct Administrator Kuzmire, you are up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I'm not going to do the town administrator part because Mary already did that. Mine's old news. So on our financial management and data, we have some updates. Professional Management Systems has done financial statements for 2022, which means we can go ahead and start on the audit. So we'll continue to work with that. I sent you a draft budget structure to look over. Michelle is now putting that or rearranging Cassell. So it mostly fits that draft budget structure. You will see some old funds like the sidewalk fund and I think they call it the street sales tax because they were in place at the end of 2022 and we have to leave them in place in the accounting system before we close them out. Amanda did Cassell training last week, and I just want to report she's doing an outstanding job. And what I really appreciate is she started to become very proactive in letting us know what we should be doing and things like that. So things have been going very well there. And I'm getting good reports that the rest of the staff feels like it's easier to do business with administration. And then I worked with the department heads to allocate payroll between government and enterprise funds. What that means is when we do payroll, of course, because you're a small town especially, you have people, particularly public works and administration, that are working both for governmental and enterprise funds. And so we have to allocate payroll so those expenses show up in the right place. That happens through Cassell. And so I met with the department heads. We determined what the those allocations ought to be, and Michelle's entering those into the system. And then this week, we are meeting with them to set up a grant management system. We have discovered quite a few problems in grants. We didn't have a grant management system, so we didn't send in a lot of reports, and we're getting those little nasty grams now. Your report was due March 31st. And so we're going to set up a system at their advice. And we also can't find the paperwork for some of our grants. One of them is the skate park grant, the Tony Hawk grant. So if anybody has any paperwork on that grant and you could give us that, that would be great. We do, we didn't lose the money. We lost the paperwork on the grant. The Doris line replacement, we did get a grant. Thank you very much, Mary, for writing that grant. And the bid documents have been completed, and I hope to put that out to bid tomorrow. So we're going to do a very short turnaround on that. Corey will be sending those bid documents to all the local contractors. We're going to allow a week because we're behind and we need to get that project done before the ground freezes. So we're going to try and move that as fast as we can. And let's see, the hydrology study and spring metering, we expect complete funding soon, and we are able to proceed with some work with partial funding. So as soon as we get some of the money, we might be able to start that project. I think the River District will reimburse on things that you've already started under certain circumstances. With the flood situation, we've only had insignificant damage from flooding. So it is predicted that the peak has passed because so far this year hasn't been very predictable. And we are asking people to continue to be vigilant. And of course, Mary announced that the bridge is going to be open sooner rather than later, which is great. And we will continue to post on our website. Under health insurance and other benefits, I know I emailed you that we had discovered that we were paying more of a benefit than what everybody understood the board had approved. You know, that recollection that there was an approval of that benefit distribution is universal, but yet we find no record of it. It's not in minutes. There wasn't anything approved. My guess is that you discussed it as part of your budget discussion and assumed that was an approval. But if it's not formal, it's not approved, particularly for an employee benefit, because there are noticing requirements for that. We did not notice the employees of the change. And so later on the agenda today, I'm going to be asking you, what policy do you want for your health insurance benefits? And we'll, begin doing that. And then, of course, when you go into your budget in the fall, you'll probably, if you want to make adjustments to that, you can. Reconstruction of the intersection at 5th and Grand. There should be a scope of work from SGM to approve to go ahead and start the engineering for that project. And then I put a little thing in about my schedule, and Mary and I are both going to be at CML. And then, let's see, we're planning to submit a planning grant to do code resolution, ordinance, and personnel policy revisions. The reason I put ordinance and resolutions, at sometimes we have not rescinded old resolutions or ordinances properly, and I think we may just have to go through a blanket move to rescind some of those old ones. So we are applying for a grant for that, and I think that's all I have.
Okay, question from the administrator? Yes, okay.
I was wondering, who are you sending the planning grant to for the code, et cetera? Which entity will grant that?
It's a DOLA Energy Impact Grant. It's the same grant that funded your master plan and your master plan. I think you got the same grant.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Dave.
I remember our training about budget revisions, and it seems like if any year needs a budget revision, this would be the year. And I'm wondering if we're planning for that.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear the question.
David.
We had a lot of training about budget revisions and changes to the budget. And of course, this year, there's been so many things that have happened. It seems like if there's any year appropriate for a budget revision, this would be it.
So the way budget revisions work, and because of the way that the budget was structured, and we're restructuring it now, it made it more likely that you would have to do a budget amendment. The budget amendment has to be done if the bottom line of the fund expenses will be exceeded. And because you had so many funds, you're more likely to have that be exceeded. At the point that we know, we'll probably come in with a proposal to do a budget revision, but you don't really have to do that till the end of the year. You don't need to revise the budget every time you think it needs revising. It's the law is, and Nick can correct me if I'm wrong, if you go over your expenses in the fund, then you have to revise it. And that's not line items, that's the bottom line.
And then the second question, as we're doing financials, I hear a lot of questioning about what's left in the sidewalk fund, where the monies have been spent, and also with any of the money we received from the pot shops, what has happened with those. And so both of those items, as they go through the finances, it'd be good for the public and for the board to be more clear on that.
More clear on what the money that's left over is? Or
I think it's not clear to citizens of what sidewalks have been done when, for what years. And then.
Oh,
what-
the sidewalk part, I don't, yeah, I'm gonna have to work on that with the staff because I don't know that we'll have to be able to put that together.
And since the marijuana money's been coming in, there's questions from citizens about where is it being spent? How's the money being spent and how much do we kick in?
On sidewalks are on everything.
Marijuana.
The marijuana money.
Oh, okay, the marijuana, yeah. So we'll be able to do that. And one of the ways or the best way to do that is to include it in next year's budget. It's your accomplishments and how you've spent money in the past. And of course, this is the year you're going to have to re-up the sidewalk fee if you want to do that. So that can be done probably best by your new administrator. Because it usually goes in your budget, your accomplishments to date.
Okay, this was not meant to be adversarial, this was more just for information.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? All right, let's move on then to the police report. Chief Lamenter.
Couple things we'll hit on. The first thing is I'd like to encourage everybody again to sign up for Delta County Alerts. The more people we get signed up for that, the easier it is to push out important information, especially as we enter our wildfire season and everything else that's going on. Having those contacts readily available is very, very handy. The other thing the department's been working on, the summer travel season is kind of picking up here. We've been working with Public Works to identify some signage that's faded or covered by growth, and just kind of identify some areas that maybe need more signage so we can reduce the amount of frustration people have when they're not understanding what they can do, what they can't do, where everything's located. And typically when you get that frustration, aggravation comes next. So we're trying to eliminate some of that. Those signs can be anything from, no left-hand turns, parking spaces on Grand, speed limit signs. I think there's some things later on talking about identifying where our parks are, just some of those public parking signs. As I'm sure everybody's noticed, we have a lot more people in town on the weekends now than we did even a month ago. Parking is a premium, so helping people figure some of those things out and directing them where they can go tends to be very helpful. And the last thing I'll kind of hit on, which wasn't on the report, but has been mentioned a couple times in a few of these meetings, and this involves everybody in town, but it kind of occurs out of many, but I would ask that everybody slow down if they can on that Highway 133, particularly up there in that construction zone. There's a lot of moving parts to that, especially given the time frame they're working in. They're working 7 days a week on that, so we're not really used to seeing construction equipment on weekends in particular, which is a heavy travel day for everybody. I just ask everybody to slow down and watch out for those guys.
Okay, questions for Chief Lamenter? Okay, and I would also like to reiterate that the State Patrol is now out there with a presence on that Highway 133 construction zone. So you're also risking a ticket if you speed out there. All right, next we have Public Works. I know we have Mr. Heiniger on the phone, but we're going to spare him and just ask, does anyone have questions on his report?
I did want, Corey, can you do a short update of the water treatment plant situation?
Yes, so we're just waiting. We ordered the K20, that's the positioner for the valve. And we ordered that yesterday. Hope to see it sometime next week. But the plant is running good. We just have to manually operate it until we get that part. But it should be here sometime next week, and it should be same day install when it arrives.
Okay, thank you.
And then other than that, I don't know if I mentioned in my report, but the fire mitigation on Cedar Hill has started. It's a fairly small crew right now, but they've already made pretty significant progress up there. And they will have a bigger crew starting next week up there as well.
All right. Trustee McGinnis, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I see on your report, you noted that, the toilets at Apple Valley Park were fixed. Does that mean that the restaurants at that park are fully operational?
They are. I don't know that they're open all the time. I think just for the day, through the day right now, and they've been locking them back up at night.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Heiniger. All right, then let's move on to item number 1, discussion about support of public art at the park. Ms. Mickelson.
Hi, everybody.
Madam Mayor, how would you best like me to set up a visual for you? Here's something you can see.
Yes, yeah, put it so that more people can see it rather than just the board. Thank
And
you.
here are some handouts.
Oh, wonderful, thank
May I
you.
pass them around?
Yes, please, thank you very much.
Maybe somebody can screenshot and share it to the Zoom or something.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
could you grab me a copy of that and put in my box if you would?
absolutely.
Thank
Can
you.
Please. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you all for having us this evening. My name is Alicia Michelson. I'm the Director of Learning Council at 138 Grand Avenue. And we wanted to come here today to sort of proactively share with you all what we're up to over there because earlier this year we received a grant from called the Colorado Community Revitalization Grant. And that grant came from the Colorado Office of Economic Development, Colorado Creative Industries Division, and the Department of Local Affairs. The intention of that grant is to support local efforts to diversity and strengthen the local economy. And they really appreciate the work that we're doing in the community, as well as the fact that our space is bringing together a lot of uses and mixed use. So we're curating the space to bring together people as a community and also to bring art into our community. And the artistic aspects of our project are intended to be therapeutic, functional, and also inspiring. Willow Wingood has been the lead on the murals inside the building. And Emily Goffrey is also the artistic director of the Hearth. Ian Oster is our general contractor. And tonight we want to share with you and our community the vision for the exterior of the building. I'd like to introduce Joe Bob Merritt, and he's our friend who is a neighbor from Gunnison. He's a designer, constructor, educator, and a community developer. Joe Bob is particularly interested in the intersection of the industrial arts and community development. He believes that the worn fabric of civil society may be mended in part through the process of building art together. His experience includes the design and construction of the Gunnison County Observatory, the courtyard of the Gunnison Arts Center, and the redevelopment of South Main Gunnison, which is a center of creativity and community in the Gunnison Valley. So Joe Bob's going to talk about our exterior.
Hi, I'm Joe Bob.
Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and trustees and staff of the town of Paonia for your time, for your attention, and for your reception of what should be considered
a general conceptual direction for the remembrance of the face of 138 Grand Avenue. The current home of the Learning Council, 138 Grand Avenue, was once the town library, where once was a request for silence amidst stacks for studies, is now a hearth of bubbling stews and vital stories, a shared place for the forging of friendships, for the mending of memories, and for the encouragement and nourishment of the diversity that is the reality of the whole of the nature of our co-humanity. I believe that buildings have a life of their own. Like people, they grow, they change, they learn, and if tended to by a community that cares about community, buildings become roots of memory and flowers of beauty that inspire and weave folks into the fabric of the civil realm. We are reimagining the face of 138 Grand Avenue. Our aim is to reveal a story in stone, timber, and steel. A story that tells the tale of the forgotten and the displaced. A story that is an adorational archive of those who once were, those who now are, and those who will to become. Rooted memory, flowering beauty is the working title for this sculptural art that we aim to install upon the face of the hearth during Q4 of 2023 and Q1 of 2024. The components of the work will be fabricated by members of the Build Guild, which is a group of artists and builders who are taking a role in this work of remembrance. The Build Guild Masters will be facilitating skill build workshops wherein folks within the community will be invited to participate in the work of arting this arc of memory. The sculptural work is primarily composed of 2 entry portals. Each is grounded upon hand-cut stone decoratively carved from hills near here. Upon these stone rise trunks of memory, timbers niched to hold diverse figures from all the old stories, imaginations, and artifacts remembered. Up from the timber trunks, these temporal stands turn to blooming spirals of wrought iron and forged steel, some sourced from the very plows and tills that did and still do root and yoke us here. Raining from these flowers of flowering forms, forged and found, twinkle beads, strands of the sights yet to be seen, each string made by hands of those near to here.
Excuse me, sir, but we do have a time limit on this, so
Yes.
please, can you wrap it up?
Yes.
Thank you.
Each bead, a ring of memory to become. As the building touches the sky, in remembrance of the intertwining of all that is, the rainbow wind winds the way around the crown, a sign of the strength of diversity and the reality of the interbeingness that binds all together again. It unifies diversity, for each one is all one, alone among all ones. It is our togetherness that defines, refines, and powers our resilience. Thank you sincerely for your interest and for the investment of your time and consideration of these ideas. I'm happy to receive any questions, comments, concerns concerning that which has been brought forth.
Okay,
Thank you.
questions from the board? Yeah,
A couple of things. First of all, it's not our decision how someone decorates their building.
correct.
So, I want to be clear about that. I am concerned if there is some kind of interference with the sidewalk. It doesn't show the reliefs, and so that's just one point. One thing that's missing in the community is board for community action posters. You know what I'm talking about? Because we have so much clutter at the post office and the post park. And I don't necessarily see if there's a place for people to post things there. So that's just a question. And then I don't know if there's a recognition of the youth history of the area, and I don't necessarily see that in the designs. So those are my only comments, but I really support what you're trying to do and think it's a beautiful design.
Okay. Other questions before? Yeah,
Mostly I have an observation. It would have been really helpful to have this in the packet because no one in the public has any idea what you're proposing.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, it's just showing up now, and which, again, to me means it should come back for people to comment on. And my second point is what Trustee Knudsen came up with, is that if things are being projected into the space above the sidewalk, that is public space that we cannot just give you. So if you are talking about 3 dimensions,
Yes, ma'am.
and is that what is proposed here?
There is a dimensionality to it that is no more or no less than that which exists currently.
Okay, and so then my other concern is you said that each of these strings will be beads,
Yes.
literally beads?
We haven't, we don't have the specifics of them at the moment.
Well, because this is, again, it's really important that this be, there can be no safety issues.
Yes, ma'am.
With something that could be blowing in the wind, it could break, it could fall. So I think we need a lot more information in my view, because this is a public space you're projecting onto.
In total agreement with you.
So we can't just give up that space
Yes.
without quite a bit of thought.
well, I would ask, yes, Mr. Markle?
Thanks.
Trustee Markle?
I want to echo Dave's sentiment that we have no right or authority to tell you what to do or not to do with your building beyond our building codes and signage laws. Regarding anything that goes over the sidewalk, my understanding is the building code allows for a 45-degree encroachment after 8 feet above it. So basically just look at the building codes, signage, and I'm not sure how this would apply to signage necessarily, but it might be better one way or the other. And beyond that, bless you, but I don't think we have anything to do with this project.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
And we're very much happy and interested to bring it back forth for, as you spoke of, if someone needs to comment.
Well, and Leslie has her hand up.
yeah, Okay.
Leslie first.
okay. Leslie?
Okay, so I'm a little bit concerned about a couple of things that I heard said. When asked if this was going to encroach no more than what is it sounded like you said no more than what's encroaching now. I just want to make it clear that if you are going to encroach at all, you need an encroachment permit. And, I would definitely look, I don't know, when I read this, I can't figure out what you're doing. And so we can't really advise you on what permitting you need without having a plan that's dimensioned, and we can see the extent of the encroachment and where it is. We can talk about safety, but we can't ensure safety unless we know what you're doing. So we are going to need more work from you, not just in the public arena, but to be able to know what permits that you might seek. And if you want to do a mural on your building that doesn't encroach, that's not really a board issue.
I look forward to working with town staff to address all of these issues.
Yes. And then Trustee McGinnis?
Yeah, I wanted to reiterate a couple of things that have already been said. I think this is a really exciting project. I do think that incorporating some space for the community to continually kind of actively interact with the building moving forward ties really nicely into what was presented as far as kind of continuing the communal interaction in and around this building. I'm curious about if and or what kind of the ongoing design process is going to look like. I'm assuming this is not necessarily the final design. That's a personal curiosity. We don't have to talk about that, use meeting time to talk about that. But I mean, I'm excited to see how this kind of develops and changes.
Yes, sir. I would definitely encourage you to contact the building inspector because he can help you figure out what encroachments, if you need permits or anything like that to go forward with
Yeah,
this.
we'll keep in communication with Dan. I spoke to him last week.
Oh, very good.
We're talking.
Excellent. That's what needs to happen. All right. Do you need anything else from the board this time?
No, we just wanted to talk to you. I could address Dave's point about the youth or the Nooch people, and let you know that we have been talking with the Southern and the Mountain Youth folks, and the Southern cultural people have requested that the council tree be represented, and that was what's over the door that's a little towards the north side, and so that's a representation of the council tree, and then the beadwork that we've been speaking of is also representative of Chipeta's shawl. And so we are really wanting to uplift and include the good people in our.
Trustee Peterson?
Just as a brief aside, does anyone know what happened to the council tree after it was cut down? Is that wood still available somewhere? Because that would be useful. That would be useful in incorporating.
That would be really cool. Good idea.
All right.
We can call the historical society and those are
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. All right, let's move on to. And this, oh, I am sorry, Suzanne, you're correct.
I just have some brief questions. So I don't know if we have an encroachment permit process described in our code. And I'd like that to be available for everyone if we're starting to grant encroachment permits. I don't know how the building code handles art, but when I look at our zoning code, of course, the sign code was removed and put in the building code, but we also have awnings. And the sign code allows a certain square footage. I don't know if this is called a sign, and it's certainly not an awning. So what is it? Where in our, what code section applies to it? And I'm not sure if it's zoning. Dan Reardon's going to have the answers for that. At one point I suggested the Homestead Beef people at the end of the street, the Peonia Food Co-op, that they put a big silver aluminum cow on the peak of their roof because I thought it would really be a great advertisement. And it wasn't allowed in our code. So even if it was art. So it's kind of a gray area. And it would be good to get this nailed down. And I still think a big silver cow on the roof would look great.
Thank you, Suzanne. Anyone else from the public? Yes, Mr. Bird.
I just
have to laugh when I hear people waving the sign code around. As far as I can tell, the sign code was abandoned when Deliverance annexed in. And if there's been any action on the sign code, it's been pretty quiet. There's so many violations everywhere around town. I just don't think it's really germane to even bring it up in a public meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Britton. All right, next up, consideration of request to install speed limit signs on 3rd and Rio Grande Avenue. Mr. Graves. I see
Hello,
you
good
up
evening.
there.
Can people hear me on the Zoom?
Yeah.
Okay,
You're good.
great. Well, thank you, Madam Mayor and the council. Apologize I can't be there in person. I wrote a pretty detailed letter that was included in the packet, and I believe I have some neighbors and colleagues there in person to represent what kind of we're asking for. A lot of this conversation, I guess I could start with, comes out of my experience living in Delta. As a teacher in Delta, I had 2 of my students that got almost fatally injured in car accidents riding around their neighborhoods. And that prompted a lot of community and family action around speed limits and safety signage in the community. And I just don't want to see that happen in our community. I want us to be proactive. And I think through the recreation master plan process, we identified that one of the things that the town really wanted, or community members really wanted the town to do first, was to take care of our existing assets. And our existing assets currently are some amazingly picturesque, usually pretty slow streets with great shade trees and great walkable community. I think that draws a lot of people to this town. And I think one way we can really uphold that and really make our town more walkable and bikeable without any sort of infrastructure change is to have more signage and safety signage around these kind of pinch points, these things that we know are dangerous areas. The few that I've identified are the turn at Apple Valley Park. It's a notoriously dangerous place. There's no sidewalks. It's a high speed intersection because people are coming off the hill. And it's also a high use intersection with kids and families, older adults, all recreating at Apple Valley Park. And I think we've all seen a great uptick in use there at the park with all the pickleball and the youth's, just sports. And now we're seeing more and more people using it as a trailhead for jumbo access, which is a great legal and appropriate access for jumbo. But it's currently a very unsafe spot. So asking the board to consider installing appropriate safety signage. I'm in no way an expert in that field, although I do have a crew of teens that can put up lots of signs really fast and drive lots of T-posts if that's an expert. But, a couple of things that I've proposed in that letter, I think we need a number of speed limit signs. There are no speed limit signs east of the railroad tracks in town. There are no speed limit signs on 3rd Avenue east of Grand, actually. And so with so many both new residents and so many more delivery trucks than we've ever had in the past, and folks doing work on their houses, lots of tradespeople that are coming in our town to work, you have no idea what the speed limit is as soon as you leave Grand Avenue. 2nd Street, we know it's a pretty high speed street, and it's only signed west of the railroad tracks. There's no speed limit signs east of the railroad tracks. Same thing with Rio Grande. Rio Grande is, although it runs perpendicular to our main streets, it's also a thoroughfare. It's access to Apple Valley and Pan American subdivision. And we've had the Paonia PD out there with their speed monitoring device. We've seen a number of very good-natured, very great neighbors being talked to by the Paonia PD there. And I wonder if a piece of that is just unaware, folks that are unaware that that is a residential street that's 25 miles an hour. So speed limit signs would just be a very low-hanging fruit for us to be able to enforce the codes we already have, not to mention set ourselves up for making our town more walkable and bikeable, which would be the goal in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. All right, comments from the public. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Please state your name.
My name is Zane Bowman. I live on 3rd Street. I have 2 children on that street. And I'm very much agreeing with Ben. He actually let me know this was the agenda, and I thought it was such a perfect answer to it, because I won't lie, I have yelled at quite a few drivers in the period of being there, because you have little kids and you're like, I'm not ever gonna be that person. And then you see somebody flying down 3rd Street and you see a little kid, and it's a high emotional thing, and nobody wants that, you know? And so I would say it's a good answer, and apparently, according to Ben, there was a trouble of enforcing that because of the lack of signage, and just having a little bit of enforcement usually scares everyone down, and everyone stops putting on the gas a whole lot. And personally, as a resident on 3rd Street, it would make me happy to not have to yell anymore, because I don't want to be that person in Paonia. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Ms. Watson.
I'd like to point out, I think the speed limits were changed in 2017, I believe. I was on the board. I would have loved if more people had come and spoken up, because I was in favor of lowering things, but at the time, Ferguson's felt that 25 miles an hour was an appropriate speed throughout town, unless it's otherwise marked. If you notice, the signs coming into town say city-wide speed limit, city-wide speed limit, 25 miles an hour, unless otherwise posted. And the reason why that was done is it was economics. They didn't want to have to post speed limits throughout town if there was a standard speed limit. We couldn't afford it. And in fact, the reason why it says citywide instead of townwide is because that was a cheaper sign. And that's honest to God, the truth. When you change speed limits, then you have to change them all throughout town, all the signs. So having that citywide sign made sense. That being said, maybe we're due for a lowering of speed limit to 20 miles an hour citywide, because everybody goes 5 miles an hour faster. And I know on 2nd Street, there certainly is quite a bit of speeding. There we have an off-road vehicle speed limit, and that was never posted. So that's unenforceable. So I guess you learn about the speed limits by being pulled over. So it has to do with traffic stops. I know when we did the speed limits, we weren't thinking about the e-bike traffic that we see now. We weren't thinking about dark skies, which darkens the streets at night. So perhaps lowering the citywide speed limit would be a really good idea, and you only have to replace about 6 signs to do that. If you have certain areas you'd like to have an even lower speed limit, then do it. But at the time, Ferguson didn't want to have too many different speed limits throughout town, because he said it would be confusing. And we also have a year-round deer problem now. And I've seen deer get on 2nd Street in front of my house, maimed in the street. They dragged them, this was 2 years ago, the deer dragged itself across Delta Street through someone's yard, laid there with a broken hind end, mashed hind quarters, and it took 2 hours before the police were able to finally come and split its throat. So we do have critter problems in this town, and I see people speeding down 2nd Street from Apple Valley, and it just breaks my heart, because they don't realize just because we're in town doesn't mean it's not dangerous going that fast. And they go a lot faster than 25. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
Ian Oster at 37 Box Elder Drive. I'm up Pan American, so I live up there. And as I come around the curve, or we think of it as a curve, a turn onto Rio Grande, I notice myself speeding. It's recently, over the past month or two, there's been a children's toy with a speed limit written on it. And it's been a great reminder to me to slow down, that children live there. So I would like to see that reminder on a signpost reminding people it's 25 miles an hour. That's enough to make me aware of what speed I'm doing at that very moment. So I'm in favor of another sign, especially in this corridor for often out of town traffic going up to Apple Valley. And I think that's an appropriate place for one additional sign.
Thank you, Mr. Oster. Anyone else? Yes.
Tracy McCurdy, 324 Orchard. I just want to stand in support of what Ben has so thoroughly written up for the benefit of the board. And a little reminder or some information for some of the public that may not be aware. I think it was the 23rd, May 23rd meeting, where the Parks Committee report included a statement. The board is asked to approve use of Apple Valley Park for general trailhead parking and to consider the following: fencing and trail preparation for the new easement through Rouch property, which will be covered later. But included in that, a crosswalk and traffic signs for the Apple Valley Park entrance, a directional sign to Apple Valley on 3rd Street, and then some addressing some parking issues. So I just want to thank the Parks Committee for making that report on what we've been asking for during these Parks Committee meetings over and over again. We recognize that the entrance to Apple Valley Park just has got to be more safe. And I want to thank the town, Corey, for clearing the tree limbs from the children playing sign, which unfortunately is after the entrance to the park, after the curve that Mr. Oser mentioned. And for myself, I go in and out of that park a lot to access the trails. And I'm very careful coming out of Apple Valley Park onto Pan American Rio Grande at that curve, because there are people who just speed around that curve. It's really dangerous, and I'm worried for our kids coming in and out of that park, regardless whether it's used for a trailhead. There's lots of kids accessing the park. So thanks for your consideration.
Thank you. Sure. All right, anyone else? All right, discussion from the board. Yes, Trustee Payne.
Having lived on Pan American, I know how easy it is to come down that hill on your way to work and just start speeding, because it just naturally started doing that. So anything that can be done to do the traffic calming is a real benefit of what's needed there. So we made very specific, Trustee Stelter and myself, very specific recommendations that are also later on the agenda that would help to alleviate that. Pedestrian crosswalk really catches people's eyes and slows things down. But I think these speed limit signs, I want to thank Mr. Graves for the excellent packet that he put in here. It made it really easy for us to take a look at what's actually needed in there. And I'd like to make a motion after board discussion.
Okay, Mr. Graves, you have your hand up.
Yes, I guess it was in response to what was saying in the public comment. Sorry, Mr. Knutson, for cutting you off here. But I think speed limit signs is just the first step, and it's the easiest step. And so that's what I'm asking the board right now is let's take the first and easiest step. I agree a ton with what Suzanne said. I think there's a lot more steps we can take, and I think there's other appropriate ways to do that through the master planning process. They found that the only thing that actually reduces speed on streets is narrowness of streets. And so people go fast on Rio Grande, especially because it's a wide street. There's plenty of gravel area to park off street, and people don't park on the actual street. People go really fast after the railroad tracks on 3rd Street because it becomes wider. 2nd Street is a wider street. So the wider the street, the faster it is. And so I think just acknowledging this, that wide streets lead to fast streets will be perfect into leading into our master planning process and zoning. But this is a very easy first step. I don't think it's a catch-all, and I don't think it'll solve all our speed problems, but I think it's a great first step. At least make the folks like Zane who catch themselves like, oh yeah, the reminder, like, oh yeah, the speed limit is 25. I think that's a very low bar that we can take today.
Thank you, sir. Other comments from the board? Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to Ben for doing all this legwork and putting this together. And I agree with the comment before it was made that it's infuriating when I see somebody drive by. Onarga is the residential street I live on. And when somebody comes down off a road and just like hammers it through the intersection, it's not good for my own mental state. So saying that, it's something as simple as like just letting people know, hey, this is the speed limit, I think can probably alleviate a lot of tension and hopefully actually get people to slow down, which is really the solution that we're looking for. I think that as long as we don't think we're going to change these signs in the near future, this is a no-brainer. It sounds like Chief Lavender is already on top of doing this. So thank you, Ben. Appreciate you.
Okay, yeah, just a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to agree with a lot that's already been said. I think it's a really important point that we have a lot of new residents have chosen to come here recently. And if we only have signage on the outside of the perimeter of our city, if somebody is new and doesn't have that reminder within our city, they could actually not know what speed there should be going. And I think another important point that I want to reiterate is without these signs, enforcement of the speed limit becomes very complicated. And so if we have the correct signage, it's not necessarily going to, promote people to go slower, but it's going to help us actually be able to enforce the limit that we have on the books, which I think is important. I think the change of signage around Apple Valley, adding a pedestrian crosswalk there, a lot of those needs, I think, are tied up in the decision that we make around using that as a trailhead for Jumbo. So I think especially if that becomes a more active area, we should really consider how that changes the dynamics of that area. But I agree with Ben. I think, speed signs is a very low bar that we could tackle pretty quickly.
Yeah, Trustee Smith.
So I love that Ben pointed out the boulder at the end of that sidewalk, which of course, if we could get that moved so people could actually ride their bike without and come back off the street. Unfortunately, there's not very much sidewalk, but yeah, get that boulder out of there. My dogs will miss that boulder. And I did like the wayfinding signs that Ben was proposing, but I agree with Trustee McGinnis. I think we need to make sure that we are ready for Apple Valley to be the parking locale for people that want to go to Jumbo. And we need to figure out that easement through the end of Apple Valley through Lynn and Jeff's property. So I think we need those wayfinding signs, but it might be premature. So I guess I would suggest we get on the agenda how we're going to deal with that Apple Valley parking lot. Is it really going to turn into the place that people should go when they want to hike or bike on Jumbo?
So do you want to make a motion, Trustee Knudsen?
Sure, I would, but I would like to respond to the comment.
Sure.
On the directional signs, I think what's appropriate at this stage is just to say Apple Valley Park to the left, so people know where Apple Valley Park is. And we're not directing the Jumbo trailheads or anything, but at least that would be a start. So here's the motion. I'd like to move that we approve a pedestrian bike sign, a blind curve sign, 25-mile-an-hour speed signs, and an Apple Valley directional sign as determined by staff. In other words, the as determined by staff means they will determine where the signs are placed, but those signs will go up.
So
And how many and where.
So reiterate the three signs you wanted: blind curve,
For pedestrian bike sign, blind curve, 25-mile-an-hour speed limit signs, that's plural, and an Apple Valley directional sign. I think that only has to come when you're traveling east.
And no passing.
Suzanne, please.
No passing.
Okay. Right, all right. The one comment I would like, okay, do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, the one comment I would like to make is I need to do follow-up. Creative Coalition should be making a wayfinding sign that should have Apple Valley Park on it, that they should have had completed and put up on Third and Grand. And I will follow up with them and see where that sign is. Yes, Steve.
What I just heard from the public was about Second Street also, because a lot of people are traveling up Second.
So put the Apple Valley sign on Second, and we get the Creative Coalition sign up at Third. Okay, all right, so we have a motion to put up 3 separate signs and then multiple 25-mile-per-hour signs, 1 line curve sign, 1 pike pedestrian and bike sign, 1 Apple Valley directional sign, and then multiple 25-mile-per-hour signs. Is that correct?
Make it 2 directional signs to Apple Valley Park, so there's 1 for Second and 1 for Third, because those are both the biggest through streets.
Okay, do you want one as well as the Creative Coalition's wayfinding sign?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, does the second agree with that?
Am I allowed to ask a quick question?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to propose that like none of us in this room are necessarily experts on signage. And I'm almost wondering if the board would be willing to put this decision in the town staff's department to just say town staff decides the number of signs as appropriate to make those places safe. Because I know with signage, sometimes it's a lot, you need signs in both directions. You might get out there and realize there's a tree blocking or, you need to put it somewhere else. So just wondering if we can make it a little more open-ended. You could even not to exceed X number of signs. But honestly, like signs aren't that expensive in the scheme of things, $35 a sign probably. So maybe just putting it in the staff's discretion of where those signs go in order to make the places safer.
I think the last part of my motion was as determined by staff.
Okay,
I have a quick.
no, there's no more
I want
public
to ask
comment.
about a no
Ms.
pass.
Watson, I'm sorry, public comment is over, that's it.
Can you add
Yes.
no passing sign on
Can
Second
we,
Street?
I'm sorry,
All
Mr.
cars
Chief
start
Manager?
For clarification, are you insisting on the 25 sign on Rio Grande? Was that part of the motion?
Yes,
Madam Mayor, if I could respond, it was plural on 25-mile-per-hour signs.
yeah,
And it's as directed by staff.
Right,
So we're
so-
not telling you where to put the sign, we're not telling you how many. We're just saying that 25-mile-per-hour signs need to be posted.
Okay, if I may.
yes,
I spoke with Ben on this a couple times. And I agree with most all these comments. Signage is a problem. I really think, and take this what you will, but the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on our north to south streets that's pretty fast. If we're allowing people to go 25 from Second Street to Third Street on Poplar or Rio Grande, that's clipping right along. Speaking with our driver instructor, based on some of the trainings he's had, at 25 miles an hour, if somebody steps out from behind a car, we don't have enough time. And given the amount of tree cover we have in our town with the cars on the street and the activities, I think it would be worth looking into maybe reducing those speed limit signs to 20, particularly on our north-south streets. That's all I have to say.
yes. Trustee Smith?
Because what our speed limits are in our ordinance, but by way of the map that Ben included in his agenda packet content, I wonder if it would be helpful if, Matt, if you took a look at that in the town and maybe came back with a proposal, because it'll have to be done by ordinance. And let us, because I don't disagree at all.
Yes, I think
But
maybe
we have to do it that
revamping of
way.
some of these speed limits, speed limits might be a really good thing. Yeah, Mr. Trustee.
Madam Mayor,
Lancer?
just for a point of discussion, at least now, when the summer traffic is happening, let's not delay putting up these signs, waiting for an overall traffic study or an overall. The purpose of this motion is to get staff moving on at least posting what we require.
And we don't have to buy
Yeah.
75, 25 mile an hour speed
No.
limit signs. And if we change the streets, then we can put those 25 mile speed limit.
Certainly,
signs
and I can work with Corey on getting some of the signs moved around. On one of our streets, I believe, in our initial audit, we had 8 speed limit signs in the span of 7 blocks. Really spreading our resources out there. So these things can be looked at, but yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so, yes, trustee.
Sorry,
Smith?
I'm just wondering, I could make a motion.
No, we already have a motion on the
No, no,
table.
no, when this one's done.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to install 3 basic sign, line curve, pedestrian, bike crossing, Apple Valley, 2 directional Apple Valley signs, and then several 25 mile an hour speed limit signs. Yes, Ms. Vetter.
Thank you, Mary. I'm sorry, who seconded the motion?
Paige.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes.
I'd like to make a motion to ask Police Chief Lamminger to come to the board with proposed changes to the speed limits map in our town code.
Okay, we have a second on that.
I'll second that.
Discussion? Okay, public comment? Yes, Ms. Watson. Make it germane to the motion to ask Police Chief Lamminger to come back with suggestions on the speed limits.
Okay, so I'm a little bit, I mean, the very specific nature of the motions right now is making me feel very uncomfortable. I like Chief Lamminger, his desire to come and, have the staff look at it a little bit more. But I swear to God, you need a no passing sign on Second Street or road markings because people pass people at high rates of speed and it's very dangerous. So I feel uncomfortable when you're being so specific because I think it would be nice to, I don't know, is there passing? Is there supposed to be double yellow lines on some of these roads? There's a few traffic issues that I think we might be able to handle through road painting too. Makes the streets look narrower. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. All right, we have yes, sir, please.
Sorry. On the comment on lowering speed limits, I do think on 3rd Street, I know that we like to put 2nd and 3rd in these high speed things, but I walk with my children every single morning on 3rd Street to take them to school, and I'm far from the only one. There's a lot of people who are walking their kids to school. Like 3rd Street is a residential street. It's not a highway. The highway was the one that was with the hole in it. Sorry, I'm trying to be funny. So, in the pressing of the thought process of lowering speeds on north and south roads, it would be nice if we could have some of that same thought process of residential streets also on 3rd, because the concept of it being a highway, it's not. I live there. We have lots of people living there. I understand it's not the road where my children are going to be riding bikes all the time, unsupervised, like on a north and south road. But honestly, there is a lot of bikes on that road. There is a lot of people and children riding bikes on that road. It is still a residential road, and it would be nice in the consideration of that speed limit to ensure the thought process that 3rd is a residential, people live there. It's not, businesses or, I don't know, highway. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering if
I'm
oh,
sorry, but we have a person from the public that is going to speak first.
Hi, I'm Emily Horn and I live on 3rd Street. And I appreciate this being looked into and I appreciate Ben taking the time to do the extensive plan. We lived there for over 20 years and it has been an ongoing issue for those years. And I do want to address the fact that, yes, it is residential, but there are also businesses now with the Deja Kitchen that is up there and the Mountain Oven Bakery. And there's definitely an increased amount of traffic, especially on Fridays when they have their open business, which I'm not opposed, that's not my issue. Because it's really young. But I just want to make sure that it's not just children, but it's also, like the gentleman just spoke, that it is bikers. There's also senior citizens that walk on that road and use walkers, and they can't hear very well or see very well sometimes. And I'm petrified that sometimes someone is going to get hit. I also appreciate Officer Lemminger and their staff, because I did see early morning this last week that there was an officer parked on the side. And I did appreciate that, because I did feel that that also slowed traffic down. But I want to make sure that it does go all the way up to past where Apple Valley Turn is, because especially with the businesses that are in there, and we do have a lot of traffic up there now. And sometimes I don't know if they are aware of the speed limits. So I just thank Ben for doing this, because this has been ongoing for well over 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ben, your turn.
Oh, just quick comment that maybe that there's an opportunity for the public to be involved in that. I know a lot of communities have like safe streets action teams where members of the public can go and survey, take data, count cars, do any sort of things. And I think that it could be a great opportunity. There's a lot of people excited about this. And if Mr. Lemminger is willing to engage some of the public in this kind of study of speed and safe streets, I think there sounds like there's some people that'd be interested. I for one would love to be a part of that.
Okay, thank you. All right, yes.
There's engineering standards for streets and speeds, and basically we need traffic counts, and we also need a generalized idea of what the use of the street is. And those standards are very set, they're set in stone basically. And I don't see why we just don't use standards in town, in particular in putting in stop signs and that kind of thing. The stop sign on 2nd and Main, it appeared one day. There was no discussion about it. And yes, I understand that the staff has a right to do that, but I think we should have had at least an engineering look at on that, because that's the route for the emergency vehicles leaving town. And yes, we need to slow down traffic in town, but it worked pretty well when we only had stop signs going north-south.
Okay, and I would like to mention, you would be probably surprised at traffic counts. We put out traffic counters when we were doing the work for the CDOT grant.
Right.
And took traffic counts for the busiest time, I mean, with Mountain Harvest Festival going on, and did traffic counts on that, and I was shocked how low they were. So we probably are not going to come close to the standards that they have set. So I don't know that we can put them out. I mean, we have them, but I don't know that we're going to come close to what the standards are. Yeah. Yeah. Let's make it.
I think some of this discussion that we've had so far kind of, in my view, can actually lead into the discussion around the master plan for the town. So all those who have kind of stood up to bring concerns, I would highly recommend that you attend the second community session for the master plan on June 24th. Because if you can add your comments to that, this can get kind of baked into the foundation of how we want this town to move forward. I'd also like to reiterate that the hardest part about putting a sign up is putting the post up. So if we change if we end up lowering the speed limits, it's going to be very easy for us to put different signs on those posts.
Yeah. Okay, anything else from the board? All right, we have a motion and a second for Chief Lemminger to look at the speed limits and come back to the board with recommendations. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, let's move on to consideration of NIDO's request to be allowed to serve alcohol at sidewalk tables at 138 Grand Avenue. Welcome back. Round two.
And just for the record, it's our address is incorrect on the agenda.
Oh,
We're at 201.
okay.
So yeah, just to refresh you all, we were asked to come back with a diagram, which we've done. We also added signatures of support. Since we had to submit it, there have been about 30 more signatures. I didn't know. I brought copies if that would be helpful.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I would just like to point out that on these, many of the signatures are from other business owners on Grand Avenue that would support this. Thank you. And then also a letter was submitted in support from the Paradise Theater. Did you all receive that?
Yes.
Okay, sweet, because I have a copy of that. So yeah, you have our diagram, which we're happy to answer questions about. We also included sample ordinance from other towns. Oh, and I would also like to add with the signatures, we would have had at least 3 times as many if we allowed people from surrounding areas. But we know that was an issue when we applied for our liquor license, that somebody didn't like any addresses outside of Peonia, so we did limit it. But I would just like to note that a lot of people wanted to sign it. It would have been at least 3 times as many signatures. So just so you're aware. And yes, we also have in the packet examples from other towns in their ordinances. And I also just wanted to let you all know, I was trying to get a copy of Crested Buttes ordinance, and I spoke with them a couple of times, and they actually don't have an ordinance. And they were kind of like dumbfounded at what I was talking about. And they just said that it's part of their liquor licensing, and they follow the same guidelines as the state around sidewalk service areas, and that it's just a yearly part of they just do an agreement with businesses yearly. So just for your information.
Thank you.
And I think that's all I had to add from our first.
Okay, thank you. Now, has Amanda did add, I don't know, it may not have been Amanda or Sam, somebody added.
The staff recommendations.
It was regulations 47-302, changing, altering, or modifying the premises.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you were aware or had seen that, that was
From the
added
state?
to the packet.
I did not, but is it just the state application?
Yeah, it's the state
Yeah,
application,
we're
yeah.
familiar with that.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that
Yes.
as well. All right, so we're gonna take public comment first. Anyone from the public want to comment on this? Yes, Ms. White.
So I was reading the state regulation, and I was assuming that the applicant had put it in, but so it sounds like town staff. So it says that the tables have to be adjacent to the building, it sounds like, and it's like right adjacent, right up next to it. And I was in Cedar Ridge last week, and I saw 2 businesses, they have little bistro tables, basically, they're not these big patio tables, the home poolside tables that everybody seems to favor in this town. They're a little bit more discreet, and they were tucked up against the building. And I see that as a way that this could work a little bit better and also comport with the state statute. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Question from the board. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Brewer.
So whether you put tables on the sidewalk or not is not really my issue. But what is, I think, germane that I want to say is that if you take a restaurant, they have floor space, and they have customers, and they have taxes, and they pay for the building, and they're paying for it. And you can break it down to how much it costs to have a table for 2 or 4 per year for that restaurant. I don't know how much it is, but I'd guess it's somewhere in the thousands of dollars. And the town of Paonia charges $5 to use the sidewalk for a year. And I think you're doing a huge disservice to the general citizenry to give people town property for their private use and basically just give it away. One of as I walked up to take a seat on the board, the first time I was on the board, the person coming off whose seat I was taking took me aside and said, almost everybody who comes before you here is seeking a personal advantage. And I'm not down on people for trying to run their restaurant and make it better and all of that. Maybe it's cool for the town. Like I said, it's not my issue. But the town is leaving money on the table while you're raising our rates over and over and over with all kinds of grand plans. And I think you should think about that and be sure you're getting fair consideration for the services you're giving away. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it's Patterson. Christina, did you have your hand up? Okay, I'm sorry. All right. Yes.
So at the last meeting, I asked to see the configuration that they were going to propose. And thank you for that. And I can see that you moved your table from third to the front, which is okay. Let me just continue. And then I read the highlighted portions that were included in the packet, and I believe, and this is probably a question for Nick, but I don't think we can approve where your tables are right now because they are not immediately adjacent to the licensed premises. With the intent, as I understand it, and this is for Nick to clarify, is that you have to be right next to your building. You can't be crossing the sidewalk. So you may have to put the tables next to the building in order to meet the state standards, because I'm afraid if we went ahead with what's currently proposed, the state's gonna deny it for that reason. And then I had a second point, which was the barrier. If you were to keep your tables there by the road, there is the road barrier issue is real. And I think we have to be really concerned and see how you would design that barrier. Because my other concern is we have a fire hydrant right there. So that cannot be impeded in any way. And I was reading through the Creed code, and they ask for liability insurance. And they also have an annual fee, which is obviously more than $5. And that's put together by it might have been their manager. But so those are things we don't have in place currently. So those are just my comments.
Okay, Ms. Vetter, you have your hand up.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. One of the clerks that I called and spoke to was Jolene Nelson in Delta. I was specifically interested in their parklets that you see on their main street on the highway now. And I just wanted to address Trustee Smith saying they can move their things there. Once they do the modification of premises or whatever, if we allow it, patrons cannot carry alcohol across that public right of way that's going to be in between the front of their building and where their tables are. It has to be a staff member. They can't walk back in for a refill. Staff members have to bring it out. Otherwise, it's a violation of the liquor code. But COVID put a lot of stuff into place and different things. And this is one of those things. So I did double check that because I was curious about the adjacent thing as well. So, but Nick, of course, probably has way more experience in this than I do. So.
Sam, thank you. And I appreciate the question, Trustee Smith. I interpret it the same way as Sam has and the clerk that she spoke with. I think there's an interest in the town in skipping the sidewalk too, so as not to impede pedestrian traffic. So I interpret adjacent to allow the sidewalk essentially to be skipped so long as there is not an intervening property owned by another entity. You can interpret this as being adjacent, immediately adjacent, that is.
Okay, thank you. Trustee McGinnis.
Yeah, I wanted to, well, actually, Ms. Vetter answered the first clarification that I wanted to offer, which is section 7, part A of section 7 gives the licensee will be granted an easement for a public thoroughfare, the transportation of alcoholic beverages. So it is the business that can transport across that thoroughfare. And so the tables don't have to be up against the the side of the building. The language on part 4, section E, all outside service areas are closed to motor vehicle traffic by physical barriers. I'll defer to our town lawyer on the kind of parsing out of that language, but I know coming from the city that I was in during COVID, what that tells me is actually full streets are blocked off when businesses wanted to come out into the street before parklets were designed. And so you had to have, you know, physical barriers to actually block off the entire street. I think a service area that is currently on a sidewalk, the sidewalk, I would say, is a physical barrier. It is closed to motor traffic already. So I wouldn't necessarily read that as a requirement for kind of large physical barriers to be around this service area. I think we do have to be careful about the hydrant that is on that corner and that we don't kind of impede that. Not to take too much time, but I also, reading through Creed's ordinance, attaching this onto an individual business's liquor license instead of creating an ordinance for an entire town, I think might be the better option for us. Mostly because there are very few businesses who have access to this type of space. And so to create a whole ordinance for maybe 2 or 3 businesses max might not be a use of our time. And if we do add it onto an existing liquor license, then we can actually add a fee to capture some of the added use of that space. I think honestly, Nido is a really interesting test case. And if we go forward with this, I might want to review in November when everything calms down, how that went for the business and for the surrounding town, to see if we want to make any changes moving forward.
Yes, trustee Knudsen.
A couple of things. First of all, we have a business here that has progressed the way we want to see businesses progress. This business started with a food truck and now they're brick and mortar, which is a lot. It's really, congratulations for doing that. The second thing, I'm wondering, I was kind of concerned that this was the Knudsen recall petition. Just a joke. Sorry. No. I saw these signatures. I wondered, question for the town attorney, what options do we have? Because I didn't ask this question during the very first session we had here. Besides an ordinance, are there other options we have to be able to approve this? Because this is the high volume time of the business. This is when most of the money is made during the season. And an ordinance will not take effect until August or September. So that's a big concern, and I'd like to know legal options that we have in order to allow this as a test case, special use permit. I don't know what you call it, but I'd like to see those kind of options.
Yeah, and I came prepared to answer this question tonight because I was a little confused about the applicant's question about or request that the town pass an ordinance. So in looking at the liquor code and regulations that flow from the liquor code, it appears that the modification of premises, which is an application that comes after someone already receives a liquor license. So modification of premises is already established in the state statute and ensuing regulations, which do authorize the local licensing authority to approve the modification of premises without actually having an ordinance on the books. So I also would concur with the earlier comment by trustee McGinnis that basically, an ordinance might not be a good use of the town's time. So the only instance that I think an ordinance would be needed would be if the town wanted to further regulate, impose further regulations on those seeking modifications of premises to allow the use of adjacent right-of-way, essentially. So I think the town could go ahead and authorize this it would have to be a separate hearing before the local licensing authority, and of course, that's the Board of Trustees, but it would have to be noticed that way. I don't think you need an ordinance, though.
All right, yes.
I guess I'm.
Why don't you come up and?
I don't want to argue with that. I like that. I guess I was just confused because when we were applying for other licenses, we wanted to apply and we're told we could not in the town. So I don't know if there's something that on the books that's prohibiting that.
No.
Or, because we were told that the town doesn't allow it. So that's why we didn't with our original liquor license application last fall.
Yeah.
So are we saying there's nothing on the books that does prohibit it?
Yeah,
It's the open container on public property, which was, I don't think it's in this agenda packet, but it was in the previous one. And it has to do that usually, right now, our ordinance says you can have an open container for a special event on public property. And I'm looking over at Police Chief Lamater because I read it somewhere today. So I don't know if Nick, if you've looked at that particular section, and I also want to, while we're on the ordinance, I don't think there's any problem with 11-1-30, which is use of public sidewalks for business purposes permit.
Right, may she have one.
Oh, I'm just saying, with this, with the alcohol, I just don't know if there's anything in there that would be different with this continued use, but it's that open container. I think you all propose that the open container ordinance would need to be looked at, because it's in this packet or the previous one.
There's two ordinances for open container. 10770 is unlawful to drink, consume, streets, alleyways, so on and so forth. 10780 is permit for public consumption. This ordinance is a mess. And it's only, the permit can be issued by the chief, the town clerk. It's only, it says permit shall not be valid for a period not to exceed 48 hours, so it's the applicability to this situation and this ordinance don't really. But I don't know, this is a question more for Nick, I don't know if this process, the permitting process is going to supersede these or not.
Yeah, Nick, would that be so? But then Sam has her hand up too. We'll go to Nick first.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that, Mayor. And so I'm in reading the section that Matt first cited, 10770 open container. It is unlawful to consume or permit the drinking or consumption of alcoholic beverages on sidewalks, right of way, etc., or other public place that does not have a liquor license. So if the premises is modified such that the liquor license extends to that area, in essence, this section 10770 would allow that licensed premises to have patrons consuming alcohol on it. And Matt, did you read another section as well?
The 10780 is the permitting for public consumption and possession, but it's almost like a special event. I'm not familiar with, I have not used that section.
Right, yeah, and I don't find that section to apply in this instance because there would be a liquor license extending to that right of way area.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to mention earlier that we did move that third table up to the front based on some of the concerns that were expressed last meeting. We didn't realize we had that room, and we can completely monitor that entire, we can see it all from inside.
So there's no concern then, Nick, with our ordinances and this change of premises or then turn of premises? Modification. Okay.
I will say that there's no concern with the ordinances that we've just reviewed here in this public meeting. I would want to take a look at the code to make sure that there are a more thorough look at the code to make sure that there are no other ordinances that would interfere or prohibit this. So I will do that. And if it would be okay with the board, I or someone on staff could reach out to the applicant to let them know.
Okay, Ms. Vetter.
It's so weird to be on this side of this. I just wanted to go back and address trustee McInnes's comment earlier about the physical barriers and stuff. The reason I specifically put that in there when I was talking about Jolene is when we were looking at the actual ordinance itself, a lot of that comes down to not only safety. I mean, if you think about it, you're right up next to the roads. In some cases, places will let people barrier off like parking spots during a day, which obviously this isn't the case, but it is still a very busy street. It's on a corner, and the physical barrier is there just as much to, I mean, we just had a whole conversation about reminders of safety, of slowing down, of pedestrians or people, you know, in this case, people eating. So it's not only good for that, but it's safer for the people who are actually sitting there and eating and drinking, you know, and then the signage that I suggested that we make sure is in there too, that also helps protect the license holders as well. Making sure that, you know, I mean, how many of us were raised to bring our plate and glass from a table? I don't know about other people, but I still do that at a lot of restaurants. People look at me weird, but you know, it can help prevent them from getting themselves in a situation inadvertently as well, where somebody is doing something that can actually, you know, put at risk their licensing. So those, if you look at those just as much for safety than anything, because the local licensing authority does have the right to set conditions for things like this to happen. So since safety seems to be the whole watchword of this meeting, it's a good one to think of, especially with it being our busy season.
Okay, thank you. Did you have any other?
Yeah, I did.
Marco?
Thank you.
Okay.
Nick, we also have section 10750 that is alcoholic beverages in certain places, specific to sidewalks. So you probably want to look at that one as well. Regarding the plan and outline, I think it looks awesome. I appreciate Lindsay or Ed's or whoever drew this up, the work to lay this out, puts it pretty clearly. My concerns, personally, I don't care if anybody's drinking alcohol on the sidewalk. I just want it to be a clear walkway for people to get through. And this seems to suffice for that. It does, basically your cordons have no thickness, so just consider that there might be whatever at the base of it are going to be like a foot wide. The hydrant, according to a different town, Columbine has a 3-foot radius around their hydrant. We might want to consult with the fire department and see what they say about it, as far as what clearances we might need. Yeah, I also interpreted the parking or the dividers to, as Sam said, apply to parking areas if there's traffic there. You know, I think since we're up in the curb off the sidewalk, that doesn't really apply. I also read, as Nick does, this is adjacent property. Town property is adjacent to the building, so the tables themselves probably don't have to be adjacent as long as they're just being carried by employees. And I'm not sure where that puts us, because if we do have an ordinance in effect that says we can't have alcohol in a public place, I guess that's a Nick question, but I would like to expedite this as much as we can. But I'm not sure how we can do that.
Okay.
Thanks.
So it seems, okay, it seems like, oh, go ahead, Nick.
Sorry, I just wanted to address trustee Markle's comment about section 10750. The subsection C does say the foregoing prohibition shall not apply to any place duly licensed for the sale of alcoholic beverages. So I think that exception would apply in this instance as well.
Okay, so it seems like the next step is for Nick to review the whole code, make sure that there's nothing that's going to impede us just doing a change of premises, a modification of the premises on this. And then if Nick finds nothing, then we can put it on the agenda for the next meeting, and then we can do the hearing that's required and get it done at the next meeting. Yeah, Trustee McKinnon.
I think if we have any specific wants or guidelines around what the barrier that kind of cordons off the space is, I think it would be prudent for us to get those to the business as quick as possible, so they can kind of plan for that.
Agreed. Okay. All right.
We need a motion.
I don't think so. I think it's, unless you want to make one to put this on the next agenda.
No, I have a motion on a slightly different topic, but related to this.
Okay,
I'd like to make a motion that we ask the staff to bring us the existing fee structure the town is charging.
oh, I think Leslie is probably working on it.
Good, because I would like us to look at the fee structure associated with the use of the town sidewalk.
Okay, yeah,
So
I believe
maybe
Leslie.
I don't need a motion, but just for us to see what it is, because I didn't even know it was $5. Oh, it's 15, but yeah, we should. And lastly, I don't know, Nick, again, this is a question for you, based on creeds. They asked the people with the liquor license to have liability insurance to be out on the sidewalk. I don't know if we need that, but that was something that jumped out at me.
Yeah, trustee.
Yeah, I read in the, I forget where it was, in the Creed ordinance that it excluded the sale of alcohol.
Oh, I didn't see that. I just saw that if they're selling alcohol, they need, I read it that they needed liability insurance, but
Yeah, no,
again,
it was a
I'll
part of it.
defer to
It's
Nick.
like, no, 19153, no alcoholic beverage shall be allowed in outdoor seating areas. So we have outdoor seating, but no alcohol.
Oh, in Creed?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, but they still ask for liability insurance.
Yeah.
Well.
Okay, well, all right, we're
Anyway,
moving on. All right, let's move
No, I
ahead.
think it's important to say, because if somebody gets hurt out on the public sidewalk, who is responsible? That's
But
why,
they have liability insurance, and so if that's part of their modification of premises, it now becomes their premises.
wait. My question is, if you're on town property, usually when anything happens on town property, the town of Paonia has to be one of the recipients in the insurance policy. I have no idea if your liability insurance does that. So again, that's why I'm deferring to Nick. Since this is, they're not in their own building, they're conducting business on public property, does the town of Paonia need to be included in liability insurance? That's just a question for you. Not at this moment.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, that is, that's something we'll certainly consider and certainly discuss with the potential licensee or modification of premises.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's move on then to consideration and approval of supplemental budget request for Phoenix Rising. Kella, I thought I saw you. I did.
Hi, I'm here. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. So we just actually wanted to expand this agenda item, not in length of time, but in terms of our topic, and give you all a little bit of update on how the master plan is going. So we are about just over a third of the way into our allocated budget. We've had one public meeting, and we've completed an initial review of all the informational resources. These are plans and documents that were provided. So we wanted to let you know a couple things. One is that the first meeting went very well, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have about that first meeting. We had just around 100 people in attendance, maybe a little bit less. And then the other one is that there have been a lot of, not a lot, but I would say a dozen more documents added to our list of required reading. These are pretty significant informational pieces in terms of the town asking us to review, which we obviously don't mind doing. But this is all to let you all know that our hours spent on reviewing background informational material and our hours spent on community engagement have currently exceeded the hours that we had allotted them in our project budget. We had initially requested about 3 times as many hours for community engagement in the project budget and slashed those at request of the council. So we're not, this is not accusatory in any way. This is just an update around how much time it is taking to deliver the items in such a way that we meet the requests of the town and also the quality of service that we want to provide for the community to engage in the master plan meeting. We have agreed with 3 of the 4 contractors to move from an hourly charge just to a flat rate of service. So that means that people are going to continue to work the hours that they feel is important to get a job done without necessarily billing for those hours so that we can stay within our budget. But I wanted to let you all know that that's where we are on the timing of things. We also have a meeting with the Planning Commission tomorrow to speak with them about some more specific direction, given things that have come up. And before I go there, I see that Leslie's hand is up. So Leslie, do you want me to pause and have you ask a question?
You're muted.
Leslie.
Leslie.
Can't hear you.
I was going to say, when I raise my hand, that's for the mayor. But anyway, my question is, when you say the town has asked you to review all this extra material, who is the town?
So great question. And Marissa can help answer some of those things. I will just make a note, Leslie, I did send a request into the town officially that all requests from the town to the team be put in writing, because we've received a number of suggestions from folks individually to members of the team, and it's been a little hard to tell if they're official or not. So now we have an official request that all communication and request for review or request for work comes in a written form to both me and Marissa, and then I'll let Marissa answer the question about the additional documents.
Thank you. Yeah, the additional documents aren't actually something that specific people from the town requested. It's more like as we got into the research, we realized there were big gaps in the materials we originally provided. I'm going to put here a list of some of those key documents, like the Park Rec and Trails Master Plan wasn't in our original folder. We were given the tree inventory, source water protection plan, drought response plan, hazard mitigation plan. Those three are all related to the water and infrastructure and risks, resilience, and emergency preparedness scope of the project. A number of documents related to the water system. So again, it's not that these were sent to us from the town, it's that we realized they existed and needed to be incorporated.
Thanks for that clarification.
Okay, okay, continue on, Cal Rose.
Yes, so so this is just to kind of give you an update on where we are. Again, reiterate our request for if you do have requests, suggestions, or questions that are formal, please put them in writing. Of course, feel free to talk to your friends and folks, your neighbors, but when it comes to the actual project and what's requested, please go ahead and put it in writing for us so we can track that. So we are going to the Planning Commission tomorrow with a list of 9 questions that came out of both the research and the first public engagement session. So we plan to come back to the commission, the full Board of Trustees, once we have some guidance from the Planning Commission on those. We'll come back to you with them as well. And then we are going into our second public engagement meeting coming up here, I believe on June 24th. It's a Saturday, and it will be a 5-hour session, given the amount of information we have to cover. There is something that we did, which I do want to actually request formally some additional budget for, and that is a mailer. We received several requests from the public at the first informational public hearing and engagement session.
Oh dear.
Who may not, excuse me from freezing, to reach out to folks who are not on the internet and also who may not be on foot and able to read the flyers we see around town, or may not have heard from us through their points of community engagement that we reached out to. So taking that suggestion to heart, we did go ahead and do a mailer using water users' addresses from the town. Marissa, I'm not sure where the final count stands right now. I know I personally stuffed and labeled about 200 envelopes and then gave about 100 plus more to another team member. 700 letters were sent. Thank you, Marissa. So we are seeking $650 in reimbursement for stamps and envelopes for that project. We do think overall that will be really helpful. And then we are requesting some additional hours for public engagement. I did mention that most of our team was willing to move from an hourly rate to a fee for service, essentially reducing their hourly rate in order to meet the needs of the proposal. However, one of our team members, which is our community facilitator, was not willing to do that. And then another team member has spent a lot more time on public engagement than anticipated. And we are seeking some hours to see if we can possibly recover those. And we don't need that money now. As I said, we're still within our overall budget, but it is a request we'd like you to consider perhaps adding to our budget to cover the mailer and these additional hours, because we haven't started most folks haven't started the writing process yet, and that's going to take quite a bit of time. So we wanted to let you all know that and just see if that might be possible. Leslie?
Okay, thank you. Yes,
Mayor?
it is. Yeah, please.
Mayor, do I have permission to speak? Thank you. So my concern is going over budget, and I don't know what, when the reference is made that the town, that there's going to be a written request to the consultant, the town really needs to control the budget. And I don't know where these requests are coming from. I think that the Planning Commission is, by state statute, the manager of this process, but they do need to, if there's going to be additional work done, it has to go through the Planning Commission, and they have to be made aware of the cost of that so that they can decide whether they want that additional work done. And because, do you see where I'm going with this? It's too ambiguous. I don't want us to go over budget without some official management of what the workload is and an understanding of how it will impact the budget. This is a general fund project. We have grant funds. The general fund is not the flushest fund. We do have some reserves, but we're going into that for code rewrites and all kinds of other stuff. So that's my comment. It feels a little bit too ambiguous what's going on right now. And I think we need to talk about some sort of management of the scope and approval from the actual town proper. I hope these requests aren't coming in from just staff members or whatever. Anyway,
Well, I don't
concern.
want to put anyone on the spot, and none of them have come to me directly, but we've had suggestions and requests come in from different folks. And this is why I'm really asking for clarification on the process and for these things to be done in writing. I also just want to reiterate that it's not that these are unspecific. We have hours documented by task, which I shared with you all in the spreadsheet. And now we have all but one team member's hours for May. So the hours are tracked by project type, and we're happy to share that with you all at any time. And so the work there, I just want to be clear, is not ambiguous. We know where the hours are going, and then we know where the additional funds, for example, for the mailer are going. I am a little bit, I have to say it is a little bit awkward to be in this situation because we did receive some guidance to go ahead and make this request. I'm not exactly sure how that came about. Marissa and I are in the process of transitioning this project management. And so we are just still, working out all the kinks with you all and figuring out how to make sure communications go well. This is why we're really shifting the focus of the conversation this night to an update of where we've done and what we're doing. So you understand it, and then to let you know that we are going to the Planning Commission for guidance on our next steps. If we also should go to the Planning Commission on any budgetary requests or oversights, we're happy to do so.
So I want to make clear that my comment was to the board, that in your consideration, those steps are in there where we have control. If there's a workload coming in from people who we don't know who they are, that we need to have control over that. So my comment is to the board, not to the team. Thank you.
All right, let's start with the comments from the public. Yes, Mr. Burton.
Having lived on fixed price bids for about 45 years, I think maybe there's some misunderstanding of the definition of a bid for work. And I can tell you that for me to go to a contractor that I've secured a bid from, or has accepted my bid, and say, ooh, there's stuff in here that I was too green to know what I was gonna have to do, is not a line that's gonna get me an additional appropriation. Again, you're dealing with public money here. You've hired a contractor that, I don't know what their qualifications are, but if they didn't understand that they were gonna have to do this, I question that this isn't part of the learning process for them. And so please be careful with my money when you go through this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone
Yeah,
else?
I just would like to clarify on that. We are still within budget, and as
Just wait a minute. We're taking comments from the public. Anyone else? All right. Yes, now you may speak, Ms. Keller.
thank you, and I appreciate the gentleman's bid, and I have been a public contractor before. We are not going over our budget. We have not gone over the budget. We have spent more hours than anticipated on a certain section of the budget. And I am looking for guidance and seeking clarification on how to move forward with that, given the cost of those hours. We have confirmed with 3 of the 4 contractors that we are going to switch from an hourly rate to complete the project within the current scope so that we will not go over our budget at this time. However, we did receive a suggestion from someone that we ask for an increase in budget to cover those increased hours. So that's why we're here tonight, to understand what that process would be and if that is an option.
All right, thank you. All right, discussion from the board. Yes, Mr. Prince.
Well, it is difficult, having spent 13 years, similar to what Mr. Bruner described in consulting. There are a number of projects I've gone through where I basically underbid that project and had to eat those hours. So I'm not as sympathetic to increasing the budget because of extra time being spent by the consultants. I think that's something that internally should be controlled by the consultants. However, it was a request by citizens at that last meeting that a mailer go out, because not everyone's on the internet and stuff. So I'm very sensitive to allowing extra costs for a mailer that wasn't included in the original packet. There's other ways to skin the cat too. We can look down the road at the number of sessions that the draft is supposed to be brought to the planning and to the town for public comment and public hearings. There are other ways to look down the road with the consultants. I believe that both Mary and I were appointed from the board to work out some of this in detail with the consultants, and I'd suggest that we try to do that problem solving and then bring it back to the board.
Okay, other comments from the board?
I have a question because I have what you have in the agenda packet for your hours. But so I'm a little confused because back in the December agenda packet, you came in with modifications. You were reducing some of your costs. And you have a budget, it's called phase 1. And complete background research and analysis and produce synthesis report. So I'm quite confused as to where this phase 1 integrates into the table of hours spent that is in our current agenda packet. So I don't know if that needs to be reconciled with your invoices and your reporting. So thank you. Any edification would be helpful.
Yes, Marissa.
I can respond to that. The phase 1 budget we proposed was not what the council approved. What you approved was the whole project. So we suggested we break it up into phases to help with monitoring and just making it more digestible, and the timeline with the new administrator coming in. There were a number of reasons we thought it would make sense to break the project up into phases. But that's not what you wanted. You wanted to do approve the the whole package.
Could I
So
follow?
we modified the overall cost of the budget and created a single project with a single set of deliverables allocated by hours and task type, which is what you see in front of you. We have updated almost all those May hours now, and I'm happy to share that with you as well. So yeah, to Marissa's point, that 3-phase proposal was not approved. There was a single proposal approved with a budget that was quite reduced from an initial bid, but we believed in line with what the town was looking for financially. And those hours and tasks are in front of you. We also just switched over to an accounting system that's a CRM-based system. So we'll be able to run more formal reports on those for you. And we're happy to give them to you whenever you are interested.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up. Maybe I'm missing a time frame here, but this was December 13, and I think your contract was approved before or after that. What was that? Was it? Well, when you came in, that was how you asked us to what we were going to see from the recording. So I'm just, have you eliminated the phasing, the phase 1 and phase 2 approach to how you're tracking spending? Is that correct?
Correct. The phasing was eliminated with the downscaled budget and a set of overall deliverables were determined.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions or comments from the board? Yeah, Trustee Marco?
Yeah, it's probably not gonna be super popular, but I don't really think it matters what your internal hours have been on various parts of the project. That's on your project management team, you know? And I think Mr. Bruner put it very bluntly, but basically if we have a bid for a total amount and you guys feel like we're going to overshoot that, that sounds like a different question than we have gone over budget. Regarding the additional materials, that's due diligence. You didn't include the Parks, Recs, and Trails Master Plan as part of your original materials. That's a pretty hefty one, and that's very recent. That's not something that's hidden. So I'm not very sympathetic right now to these the request for $3,000 more. And in addition, if I'm reading this right, the spreadsheet that we have indicates that the total project hours expected were 1,654 3/4. Is that correct?
Let me open that up just a second.
On page 129 or 134 labeled in the packet, the green and white spreadsheet.
So our total budget, 54,895. We are, just to be clear, still within that budget. We've used about 29% of that budget, which is largely on track. We're about a third away through the project, about a third away through the budget. So you can break down those back into hours, which I believe you have in front of you. What was your question?
Question on the page 134 of our packet, we have a project total of 1,654.75. Is that the expected total hours that the project will take?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, and then if the hours used to date are 234.25, the percentage is actually 14.15. Looks like you have half of the percentage in that calculation there. And it's not here nor there. I just want to make sure that we're clear as to where we are with our hours and time, or money rather, not hours.
Yeah, I actually want to do this with you in real time, but I appreciate your question and we'll get back to you with an email to the whole board tomorrow.
Thanks.
Other questions, comments? Yeah, Trustee McKinney.
Yeah, I think I want to reiterate Trustee Knudsen's comment about the contractors responding to a request from the public to make what they're doing more accessible. And I think there's a level to which, you know, you're not necessarily going to be able to see those requests coming down the pipeline. So, I mean, I do think that some extra money for the request directly from the public seems valid. I hear the concerns about creating a bid and allocating money specifically for this and then possibly going over. I do want to remind the board that I wasn't part of this conversation, so I don't know the rationale behind it, but their initial bid was downcut at our request. And I do think that there is some consideration that should be made that we had asked for something lower. Never mind, I've seen much.
Another comment from the board? Trustee Markle?
Yeah, I think, I mean, if we can't let the public dictate by request how this is gonna run. If we're gonna change the process, since we're the gatekeepers of the money and we're the, you know, supposed to be acting in public interest, it makes sense to say, okay, the public has asked that we do a mailer. It's going to cost us a couple $100 in stamps that we hadn't expected. Can we do that? And we met like twice a week or more in special meetings and whatnot. There's been a lot of opportunity to ask us for this, you know, and again, like, to Leslie's point, we need to have a clear process for making, if we're gonna have change orders, have change order, you know, this is project management stuff. This is not town administration, like board of trustees stuff.
Ms. Moore?
Thank you for that. And part of the reason for sending the mailer, Trustee Markle, again, this was not a formal request from the board, but you mentioned in the last community engagement session as well, like how can we better target in-town residents? This was one of the ideas we had. We tried to get on to get into the public process to have this discussed before we sent out the mailers. I believe about a month ago, and this was the soonest we could actually get on the agenda. And because our event's coming up in less than 2 weeks, we just had to go ahead and do it and hope for the best. And it's, you know, it's a small portion of our overall budget, but there are other things like that have come up. And that's what, again, why we want to get clear about what is our process and making sure requests are made formally. Another piece is these events are longer than we budgeted for. That was kind of more, again, informal requests of us, and we are learning. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to be really clear that none of this has come from poor project management, but rather from goodwill of trying to respond to informal comments and requests we've received from various members of the trustees. And now we are really asking that everybody confirm what they want in writing. We understand the process. You all understand the process. There was a canceled meeting from planning due to lack of quorum. We were not able to get on the last town agenda. So we hear you loud and clear. We are on board for project management. As Marissa said, we are ready and know that we may eat the cost of that mailer, and that's okay. We can do that. We have a budget and we signed a contract. However, again, given another informal suggestion, we are here today and we're glad that we're learning about how you all would like to run this. And I think that what we'll plan to do is have more formal updates with you all on a regular basis, as well as our regular meeting with the Planning Commission to seek direction per the statute that Leslie mentioned.
Okay, anything else from the board? Okay. All right.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to design of handicap or designation of handicap parking at town property. Yeah.
Take a 5-minute break.
Sure, but let's make sure it's 5 minutes because we're running out of time already. And we only on number 5 of 16. And that's it. So, all right, all in favor? Aye. All right, 5 minutes. 9:02. That's more. Not true.
Ended it up. I got my hopes up here. That many people.
1447.
According
According to the developer's office. 1447.
I know, it's a glamour dome.
Well, God knows I'm the fashion master of town, God. All right. That's it.
So that's item number 4.
No, 5. 5. Let's move it along. All right, we are back in session. All right. Designation of handicap parking at Town Park.
Could I make an interlude motion? I'd like to make a motion that we look at our agenda and ensure that we get to the things that have a time-sensitive decision needed and Leslie made, because we still have an executive session to do.
Right.
So I'm a little concerned how long we might have to be here. So I would like to make a motion that we discuss reprioritizing some of our agenda topics for timeliness.
Okay, so what would, let's see. I think we definitely need to do
9.
9, I believe 9 is July 1st. Oh, no, we have to do that before July 1st. So 9 is timely.
9 and 10 go together.
12.
Okay, 9, 10.
We might consider public as well, if there's something that people are interested in.
Well, first we need to make sure that we get everything signed that needs to be signed. So let's take care of that first.
Maybe 12 and 14 then.
Yeah.
Or 13.
13 needs to be signed soon too, didn't it?
Yeah. We'd also like to have a decision on 12.
So 12,
13,
13,
and 14.
Yeah, the grant agreement, yeah.
Can we bundle those together in a consent? Seriously, I mean.
Well, 10, I think 10 deserves the
10 gets some thought, but 12, 13, 14 are all pretty perfunctory in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Do we need to discuss UMB financial purchasing cards versus credit cards? I mean, is that something that we're gonna need to discuss?
I don't think so. That's why I said perfunctory.
I mean,
I'd ask Leslie.
Yeah, the USGS thing is a slam dunk. I mean, we've done that for years. Do we really want to turn down the planning grant, $10,000?
No.
Probably not. So those two definitely are planned.
Some areas are
Yeah. Ms. Vetter?
I'm sorry, I might have misunderstood, but the key cards, you weren't talking about moving that because that's also very time sensitive. We need that situation dealt with.
We need to talk about that.
So I would like to make a motion that items 9, 10, 12, 13, and 14 move to the top ahead of number 5.
I'll second that.
All right. Input from the public? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right. All right, then we're going to skip number 5 at this point. And actually, we have number 11 and number 15 are the same. So we can actually eliminate one of those.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to move on to number 9 then. Consideration and selection of Colorado Employee Benefit Trust. All right, yes.
Are you taking public comment first or?
No, we're going to have a presentation from whoever's doing the presentation on this first and then take a comment.
Sam, are you doing this?
I don't really have anything other than what I put in the memo.
Okay, well, I'll just explain what Colorado Benefit Trust is. It's the health insurance plan that most municipalities go on because it is a employee pool for governments in the state of Colorado. So they offer a lot better coverage for about the same price. Some things are slightly higher, sometimes they're slightly lower. When we get to the next discussion, we're going to have to talk about how we establish an employee share for that. But anyway, that's it. It's a great program and I've used it, and you don't have to argue with them if you need something. That's my favorite thing.
All right, employee input, or employee, good God, public input. All right, seeing none. Trustee Knudsen.
Well, having spent decades on employee benefits and stuff, first of all, I was really pleased. This is the public sector equivalent of CIRSA, is what we have, but it's for medical insurance. And they also do refunds too, like if your loss experience at the end of the year is low, then you actually get a refund on your premium, which you don't really get from Rocky Mountain or other insurance providers. And then I feel like a broken record on this one, but if I read the fine print on this, the Triad Employee Assistance Program is also included in it, which is amazing. And so they have them, we use those employee assistance programs at Chaco, at Or, at all the other places I work, they're really Pardon me?
Psychological, is that what that is?
It's psychological, it's financial, it's drug, alcohol, family counseling, anything that employees need. It's the touchy things that supervisors have to deal with because the behavior's gone off the rail, but not for work-related stuff. And so they can refer the employee can self-refer and get help for those kind of issues. And so it's really helpful for the supervisors, helpful for the employees. But I thought the overall package was really strong and really good. Our big decision is which tier we want to go.
Yeah.
Sam, what's your
Yeah, is better?
Okay, Cynthia, now this is where I can jump in because I was really impressed with it too. Trustee Knutson is right, the Triad was included in that. The other, all 6 of the modules that were on that same page are provided at no cost to the employees, including the Triad is 6 free sessions a year. There's a health blue book where you can actually find and be rewarded fair medical price stuff if you're willing to travel a little bit, travel assistance. I can honestly say I've had a few meetings with our staff now, and this was the first time ever I've ever gotten a 100% response on anything. There was a couple of questions just about stuff, but all of the staff was on board with moving to this plan if you guys were okay with it.
Yeah, Trustee McGinnis.
Yeah, I think the Board of Trustees as a kind of deciding factor on the purse strings, if you will, because the costs seem to be very comparable and we have a 100% buy-in from our staff. I don't know that it's much of a conversation from where I'm sitting.
Other comments?
I have, okay, this is reading on page 157 of the contract. It refers to Texas for insurance information. And I just wondered if this is a boilerplate, and maybe we could get a Colorado one. It's section 3.11. The Texas Department of Insurance maintains a toll-free telephone number. And I just didn't know if that was, they're there, or is that we all call Texas?
So I can talk to you about that. So they hire a manager, and the manager's it's called Willits. They have an office in Colorado, but they are not based in Colorado. So it's an insurance pool, but they hire someone to manage it.
So Texas is real.
Right. So you're going to see, and in fact, I think I had to send in an insurance form for reimbursement one. It wasn't within Colorado. Usually your providers file for you, but occasionally you have to file your own thing.
And then I had a follow-up. So it sounds like CEPBT is pretty all-inclusive, but will there need to be a town of Peona person who is the point person for this benefit by trust group?
Yes.
And do we have somebody available to do that, to be the point person?
Well, right now it's Sam, and I think when the new town administrator gets here, they can decide.
Okay. And then the last thing is, so the staff, we have to choose PPO 5, 6, or 7?
So there's 2 ways you can do that. They have different deductibles. And so in the next thing I was going to talk about, that we might want to switch to a comparable payment that we're making now for the employees. But that is the top, because the difference is that you have a difference in deductibles. So the premium is different. And that way the employee can decide, I'm going to pay a little bit more and have a lower deductible, or I don't get sick that much and I'll pay the lesser amount. And so you don't really need to decide that. That can be an employee choice.
Good.
Yeah,
I'm glad.
yeah, exactly.
Me too. It makes my eyes glaze over.
So other questions, comments from the board? Okay, yes, trustee
Motion
Christian.
to approve the proposal for Wilson Tower Watson for CPT proposal.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next is the discussion on direction to staff regarding board policy for town cost share of health benefits.
So the situation is that I had been told that the plan for the town share is that they would pay 90% of the employee premium and 50% of the dependent premium. We recently discovered that the town has been paying for 90% of the premium, regardless if it's an employee or dependent. On top of that, which is quite a lot of money. I mean, it's not a small amount of money. On top of that, several of the employees brought me their more recent instructions they had given to them by management about what their premium would be, and it differs even from that. So there was no consistent application of how the employee benefits were happening. There was a consistent application of how they were being paid. And on top of that, we could not find any time when we had properly noticed the employees of a benefit change, which is required. And so we also looked for this board decision that we were told that you made, and we cannot find it. What I think happened is that when you approved a budget, it was discussed and that you thought you were approving it. So what I'm going to suggest is because the way this works is that the employee can choose their monthly premium, is that we figure out a payment for the employee that's similar to what we're paying now in this budget. But the problem is dependence, because, you know, it's a lot of money that we have paid over the last few years since that change was made. I don't know. I mean, I know at least one employee told me that they had no clue that they thought they were paying 50% because, you know, people don't usually go and add up what's being deducted from their check. They just see a health insurance deduction. So the big question for you is whether you want to revert to what you thought you approved, which is a 50% payment for the dependent, or if you want to continue the 90%. I don't want to change it much more than that because it's too much of a shock to the employees. And in any case, if we change it, like at the next meeting, we bring back a policy based on your direction, we still have to go through this noticing process. So the change isn't going to happen soon. So it's complicated. And it's another one of those things where we found out we probably weren't doing it right, and we're going to get it on track. And now that ADP is managing our onboarding, we will have consistent forms and people will sign things. I mean, we don't have records that people were given forms or anything. Some people were, some people weren't. And I don't know, Nick, if you want to add anything to that.
I have nothing to add except that I'll just say that the noticing requirement comes from the Affordable Care Act, and that's it does require that the town provide notice of any change in benefits so that the employees have an option to enroll in the Affordable Care Act program as an alternative.
Okay. So I think we're going to take public comment first. Anything from the public? Yes, Mr. Berner.
So, according to Leslie, I'm too stupid to know anything about the law. So I guess I can go ahead and ask a question. How does this differ from embezzlement? If you've got the people in charge of the money who are keeping track of the minutes of the meetings and preparing the budget and the audit and doing the banking, and they're spending money they're not authorized to spend. What kind of pushovers are you guys?
Thank you, Mr. Burton. Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Watts.
I would just like to point out, when you look at the former employees, Corinne Ferguson had the most to gain from this because she had so many dependents. And I think it was purposeful that this happened. I hope you're like a little more careful. I'm sure you're being careful now. I'm really glad that you're looking at professional administrators, but this was a direct result of that person that you hired without doing your due diligence and looking at her background and how she took advantage of the town with her utility billing when she was the clerk. And she let herself off the hook for not paying. I know, but what I want to say is, thank you for finally, sir, thank you for finally going through a good process.
This is off topic and it's accusatory.
Excuse me, the public can say anything they want to say.
Not in the rules.
The public can say anything they want to say
Okay.
according to the Constitution of the United States of America, which we are subject to. Our town laws,
Robert's rules of order.
our meeting rules do not supersede.
Point of order, yes, sir.
The first.
Argumentative and not up to
I
germane to
would,
the discussion.
I uphold the point of order. All right, let's carry on with the meeting.
May I be recognized?
We are discussing back on the topic. We are not going to do anything
May
else.
I be recognized, please?
Trustee Markle, as long as you stay on topic.
Thank you. Leslie, it sounds like you know about how much money this cost us. Can you tell us?
I don't know because I don't know exactly how many dependents you have, but it's definitely in the tens of thousands of dollars. It could be, you know, I don't have a dependent count. I could figure that out for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Could I add a point? So I just want to make it clear that right now, we are offering for our administrator candidates, 100% of employee and family premium paid. And I want to remind everybody, when we talked about this in our first round, it was noted that nobody was getting that except Corinne as administrator. She was getting better insurance benefits than the other staff. So I just want to make it clear that was part of her contract, as I understand it. But what I also recall is, and Cindy was pretty clear that this was quite generous. That's why I was really surprised to hear that there was 90% being paid of family. That's not the impression I got in my discussions. So I just want to tell you what I was told. I don't know if there was intent.
So we need to come back and make a decision here. We need to talk about this. Trustee Knudsen.
I remember from the budget hearings last year, and correct my memory if I'm wrong, but I remember approving, there was a request by employees to bump it up even above 90%. They said, no, we're gonna stay at 90%. And then 50% for the families and keep it at that. And it was a discussion. You know, the way those budget hearings were going were very kind of freewheeling, if you ask me. They weren't really like formal motions approving this or approving that. So obviously we certainly need to button that up. I'm pretty shocked myself that 90% of employee premiums, and the problem with the finance committee is when you go through the disbursements, what you see is the total amount sent to Rocky Mountain, but not how it was broken down by the employees. So that's when we had got past all of this.
Right.
So, you know, I'd like to make a motion that we move in a measured way back to 90% employee premiums, 50% for dependent. We would do that in a tiered manner. So the first, we would drop it by 10% per month until we're down to that 50%. This gives the employees time to adjust financially to that impact, the ones that have families. So they know it's coming down the pipe, and we're gonna move it from 90 down to 50. But we're not gonna do a full swoop, because it's gonna be huge on their paychecks right away.
Okay, is there a second to move from 90% coverage for employees to, and 50% for dependents in a tiered manner at 10% per month?
To take care of the dependent thing, to get it back down. to
Yes,
50.
yeah, I'm not gonna add all that to the
Yeah,
motion.
but you don't come back.
I'll second that.
All right, further discussion from the board. Yes, trustee Smith?
No, I'm good.
Okay, you're good.
It's fine.
Okay, all right, all
Well,
in favor? All right.
Can I just put
Yeah.
something in? I'm having trouble weighing, having been an employee in a situation, not in a situation like this is rather remarkable, but knowing that a 40% hike in the premiums they pay from one month to another is going to be very extreme. I don't know if extending the period of time that we're kind of covering more than we had intended to over what's almost gonna be 6 months. I don't know, I'm for, well, okay. Yeah, that's. Thank you.
And I just want to add, just for trustee McGinnis's, because you weren't here during budget, and pretty much everybody got a pretty good raise.
Yeah.
So I feel like we have a little bit of a buffer there.
Okay, yes, trustee Stolper.
And this will get them right to the point where they can enroll in the Obamacare, Affordable Care Act at that point, because the enrollment period it starts, I believe, in November. And they can make that decision there.
Yeah.
So, and it sucks that we have to do it, but this is what we have to take care of the money.
Okay, anything else from the board? Okay, we have a motion on the table to move from 90% for employees and 50% for dependents in a tiered manner at 10% per month. Yeah, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion carries. All right, next.
We'll bring you back something at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, next is consideration, approval, and authorizing signatures to sign agreement with UMB Financial for the purchasing of P cards. All right, who's going to talk about this one?
You want me to do it, Sam? Or do you want to? Well, I brought this up. So what most governments are going to is P cards because they're less likely to be used inappropriately. I did work for a town once that gave people debit cards that they could get cash from. That's not good. And yeah, so we have credit cards now. We've had a problem because they were in one person's name, and when we went and I brought up, why don't we just do P cards? And Michelle Duran is also recommending those from Professional Management System. They're a way for employees to purchase, but it's more set up for government, so there's much better control, we'll call it.
Okay. Anything from the public? Yes, Mr. Berger.
Yeah, I'd sure like to hear more from Leslie about what the problem is that we're addressing here. She kind of jumped through that part.
All right, anything else to add, Mr. Berger?
I'd like to stand here while I get an answer.
We don't do that in this section. If you need, she can email you the answer.
You're not curious?
Mr. Berner?
Isn't it your job to
You
be
can
curious?
stand here for your 3 minutes, but that's the end.
Boy. Sounds kind of
No, she did say
weird.
the problem.
She
did say the problem.
Well, tell me.
All right, we're not going to have a back and forth discussion here. This is back and forth.
Would you please repeat to me what she said the problem is?
There were problems.
Exactly. What does that mean?
Mr. Berner, I'm not going to argue with you. You can stand here for your 3 minutes, or you can sit down and have Ms. Klusmeyer email you.
Would Ms. Klusmeyer please email me an explanation of what the problem is that we're addressing by this move to P cards?
Thank you.
And my comment is that I think you should all be curious too.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm.
Yeah.
All right. Questions from the board? Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could get more information from Leslie about what the problem is that we're trying to solve by moving to P cards.
So there's no problem. It's just that we are in the process of canceling our credit cards because we had one signatory who is no longer working for the town. And we can't change the signature the way we set them up. I mean, that was one of the reasons I asked for a resolution from you for 2 signatures, so we don't get in this situation again. But there's no reason to have credit cards. Most towns are going to P cards. And we thought it was the opportune time to switch because instead of ordering new credit cards, which I don't think are the best option, we can order P cards. That's it. Just efficiency while we're bringing things in line. We thought it was a good idea.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Vedder.
I hope you don't mind me interjecting. When I was talking with Michelle about the P cards too, one of the things she pointed out is that they can actually save staff time. Like each card for a department would only be able to be done in certain funds. It would automatically invoice. It would help track receipts. And there's a lot of benefits to it. They're much more secure. And we can actually cut down on the amount of invoices that we're having to pay out by doing some of those purchases just through this card.
Okay, anything else from the board? Yeah.
So to follow up with what Sam just said, so it was we used to just see a single bill for the Visa card. Will there still be a single bill coming from UMB for all purchases made with multiple cards?
May I answer that, Mayor?
Please do.
There's still going to be a single bill, but it will actually track. And from what Michelle was saying, it can actually be integrated with the system. It'll cut down on the amount of inputting and stuff like that we'll have to do, and it will better track expenses for each of the departments.
So, and I guess I'm looking at it from the finance committee standpoint. So will the finance committee actually see a written out list of expenditures on the P cards in one document?
I believe so, yes.
All right, anything else? All right, somebody want to make a motion?
I'll move that we approve P cards for town purchases.
All right, we have a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next, consideration and approval of the mayor signing the USGS survey joint funding agreement. And that's for our little data station out in the river.
So we take public comment first.
Yes, we have public comment. All right, seeing none. Would you like to make a motion on that one or discuss or ask questions?
I've got a question.
Yeah.
This is a significant upcharge from what it was when I was on the council before.
That's been how many years, Rick?
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
And it's significant. The whole bill at one time was like $1,500. And we split it, and it was a more equitable split, something like 60-30, 60-40. And this is it's a big jump. And I'm wondering what the benefit to the town is. How much benefit do we get from it?
Well, frankly, during this last flooding season, it was really nice to go and look at that data and see where the water was. Okay, Trustee Markle?
That was my question was, what's the benefit? There's
Yeah.
a Union Station at Somerset, and there's one in Hotchkiss.
Well, okay. Yeah, Trustee Knudsen?
Well, with River Lake community, this is a huge benefit because they're looking at the run between Bayonne and Hotchkiss. So this is the only way to gauge what the stream flows are. There's a lot of ditches coming out between Somerset and here. And so it's a real helpful gauge. We've just seen the necessity for maintaining those gauges with this last flood event that we had. And this gauge was pretty important to be able to see. So It's an emergency work to get it up and running early in order to watch that flood monitoring. But for flood monitoring, for safety, for river safety, especially in the spring, it's really good. We had a river fest here June 5th and 6th. No one got hurt, but watching those gauges, everyone's watching it. So.
Okay, can we get a motion?
Give us leverage, excuse me.
I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and follow up or go ahead and pay the cost, our town cost of 4517 with the gauging station.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Next, we have consideration and approval of the mayor signing we did that one. Approval of the mayor signing the drinking water revolving fund planning grant agreement. And that's $10,000 to help with our SRF loan. Okay, anything from the public? All right.
I move we approve the mayor's signature for the water revolving fund planning grant.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, so here we are, 9:23. We have an executive session left. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more agenda items. What would the board like to do with those other 5 agenda items? Yes, Trustee Knudsen.
Well, Madam Mayor, some citizens showed up for some of the issues like the mid-block pedestrian crosswalk, the Apple Valley crosswalk and traffic signs, top of Panamera and Vista Drive. I would suggest we move those to another agenda so that people that are interested in those can come to the meeting and actually discuss that with the board, may not be placed way in the back of the agenda.
Okay.
They have to wait
At
for
the beginning of the agenda. Okay.
And then the discussion of appointment of committees and mayor pro tem is something that really is an in-depth discussion. And I'm wondering if it's best that that be a work session. We had talked about doing a work session for a half hour before a meeting and then go into a meeting and the public could watch our work session. And I believe Trustee Markle is going to be a facilitator for that because the mayor will be out. So this would be a good opportunity to have it well facilitated. And I think that discussion really is appropriate for a work session, followed by public comment in a meeting and then decisions on those things. So that's what I'd like to do with number 15. And then 16, if we don't have the building inspector online, I'm not.
What does this mean?
Is this building evaluations?
This is something that Trustee Markle brought up last time about the change.
All the third is.
This is about the building.
Now, I would like to mention that the appointment of committees is the mayoral appointment. So this is not really up to trustees. It is my appointment of trustees to the various committees.
Is it not a trustee decision about which committees we have?
No, it really is not. Now, I have garnered input from trustees as to what committee you would like to serve with, and I generally put you on the committees that you want to serve on. It's in our code that the mayor is the mayor appointment.
I'd like to ask Nick that question. Whose decision is it what committees the board decides to have?
To have, not who's on.
No,
To have.
this is the mayoral appointment, not
I
the
don't
committees
believe
themselves.
that's true.
I'm not seeing anything on a quick review of the code. So I will have to get back to you on that, trustee. I'll look as you guys speak.
Yes, trustee.
Well, I looked at, we went to great lengths for each of us on the committees to put together what we felt our duties should be, which really needs to be a part of this discussion, and it wasn't included. So I think, because I really think not only do we need to look at the duties that existing members put for their committee, but decide, are these committees doing what they should do? So to me, this is a bigger discussion than who's on a committee, which may be your prerogative, I don't know. But at this point, I think we need to relook at our committees. Are they right? And do we need to reconfigure?
Yeah.
And then determine what that means. You continue doing finance committee.
And that's
just maybe what you didn't want about it too.
Yeah, and that's fine. I'll continue to do it. The only problem is, I won't be here to do disbursements or check signing at the next meeting. Because I will leave either late Saturday or very early Sunday, and I won't be back until Wednesday or Thursday.
So can we have a proxy?
You and I are the only
We're
signers.
the only signers. So maybe you do need to appoint somebody for the finance committee. I don't know if that's what you intended here. So
Yeah, that's part of it, and I was going to appoint somebody to the finance and water committees, because that's what are the openings that we have. Guess who's available?
I might put available in quotes.
But it might be good if you're going to ask, trustee McGinnis to be on each of those, to explain what is necessary. for the finance
Yeah, that's my
It's a
concern
timing
with,
thing.
yeah, that's my concern with appointing trustee McGinnis to the finance committee, is because you do have to be available to go over disbursements. And that could be an hour to hour and a half long, and that's the day before, day of, well, generally the day of the meeting.
The day of the meeting.
And then you have to come in, and sign checks. That's generally, you just sign the checks, because you've already done over the disbursements, but that's what's generally involved in that. And if you're available for that, then.
But it's just.
Yes.
As a former member of the finance committee, it is a serious commitment, because that is the biggest time consumer on any.
It is.
So I think trustee McGinnis shouldn't be asked this to just on the fly.
Right.
Whether he wants to participate in this, but he should talk to former committee members like trustee Smith and myself about what's really involved before he jumps in.
I agree with that, if I might speak.
Yeah.
But somebody needs to be put on it before you leave. And can you do it outside of a meeting? Can you choose somebody outside of a meeting?
I don't
We need
think
to
so.
extend this meeting.
Oh my God, you're right. We need to extend this meeting, because we do still have an executive session to do as
We
well.
have to extend until 10 o'clock.
Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah.
Okay. So the thing is, you have to go to the bank and you have to sign the signature cards, and whoever else we put on, but if we switch it, then has to go to the bank, sign the signature card, so. It would be nice to have a commitment that's going to stick. That's the issue.
Okay, who's got the coin?
Well, let's put it this way. Would someone like to volunteer to be on that committee? We'll start out there. Does someone have a desire or whatever to be on that committee?
And I want to tell you, it's actually a really good committee to be on, because you understand a lot of what's going on behind the scenes. Not everything, unfortunately, but you get to see money's being spent, and I know a lot of the nitty gritty. So just,
I would volunteer, but I'm leaving at the exact time.
that's right. So you're,
Yeah.
If the only set time commitment is an hour to 2 hours before the meeting, my schedule is always available from 2 o'clock on Tuesdays.
Is that too late?
No, I don't
I
know.
asked Sam, is that too late to go through disbursements? The day of the meeting?
Or I have time in my schedule if no one is going to step up to the plate, I can be on the finance committee.
I was just going to add that all of those processes right now are being kind of revisited and renewed. So probably talking with Amanda, I imagine that times could be moved around. The disbursement process is actually a little less time consuming now. So it may be something that it might be easy enough to move to a time that would be convenient.
Does it have to be done? Can we do it the day before the meeting, or is it not ready until the day of the meeting?
This week was a little bit different just because Amanda was out of state at Cassell training. But generally we try to have disbursements in the packet so they'd be done generally on a Friday, maybe even before, depending on how streamlined things are. So that's why I'm saying it's just kind of fluid right now. I'm sure it could be worked with.
Trustee Pearson?
I'm curious if the bank can resurrect previous signed cards, because I was a signer.
I don't think so, no, that would not.
No.
That would seriously not be kosher.
What is the mayor pro tem?
You are not allowed to speak, I'm sorry. So, yeah, if you're willing to step up to it, then I will appoint you to the Finance and Water Committees. And then we can have a discussion, at a work session about, are these the committees that will serve us well? Do we want to have different committees? And that can be a work session. Okay, yes, interesting.
Mayor, I think you should try and find some citation for your authority to designate committees and their members.
There is
I
none.
don't think you do.
Well, we'll get there.
We're doing the agenda.
All right, so now, since we have moved these to the next board, and we're talking, what does the board feel? All right, do we want to put the discussion of requesting building variations on that next agenda as well?
Yes, because I have no idea what this is.
Okay.
I mean, I would defer to trustee Markle if he's the one who.
Right, well, I mean, we all voted on it and it passed. So I'll remind you, last time we met, I mean, you can watch the tape if you want to, but basically the way that the building valuations are created is that the building inspector asks you to imagine what it would cost if you hired somebody to do the job. And then you pay that.
So it's actually for a building permit.
It's for the valuation that determines the cost of the permit. So it's not what it actually costs you. It's not based on what your actual labor is or any of those things. It's what it might cost had you hired someone. If you want to do the work yourself, yes, what it would have cost if you had hired somebody. And I don't think that that's a good way to create fees.
I just want to put, this was not well worded. It was not clear to me what this meant.
So do we want to put that, do we want to discuss that this evening, or do we want to put that on the next agenda?
I think if we're looking at our fee structure and how we actually are gonna organize that, that's a more in-depth discussion than maybe we have the time or energy to have right now.
Yes, trustee Sullivan.
That's more of a work session discussion. That's where we can really get it all done in a less formal and more efficient fashion than doing it in a formal meeting.
Okay. All right, so, yeah, trustee, I mean, Nick, unless you want to become a trustee, Nick.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, so I just wanted to add that I'm not sure what Dan Reardon's contract looks like, and if that speaks to fees, it lets him have input or potentially to set fees. So that's something the board might want to consider as part of that discussion as well.
It's part of the discussion.
Okay. So it's sounding like the board does not want to put this on the next agenda. Is that the feeling I'm getting?
Well, didn't we have a motion to put it on?
You can put it, you can do it as a,
We can do it on a motion.
yeah, you put in a motion to put it on the next agenda. You could do a motion to put it as a work session. You can do what you want, but either that or we deal with it tonight. You can table it.
I'd like to make a motion to put this into a work session.
Okay, shall we set the time for a work session?
Could I add to that? Could it be a work session on fees for the town of Paonia?
I love it.
Bigger.
My motion is amended to be this subject and fees for the town of Paonia as a work session.
All right.
I'll second that.
Okay, now, do you want to set that work session?
December or
December.
July 6th. I won't be back until July 6th. That's my first date. So prior to that would be fine.
So then the question is, do we want to do this? We're about to hire a new town administrator. Do we want to try and do this while Leslie's here or do this after we have a new town administrator?
It's policy.
It's what?
It's policy.
I think do it in July, good.
Okay, then we're talking. You want to do it in between Tuesdays, say on the 18th?
I'm not the
I think go for the sixth, Thursday, except that that's when you all have your meetings, 3 to 5.
We can move, but that is close to our.
Yeah.
Yes, trustee.
Well, we have discussed for a long time having work sessions before council. Meeting.
Okay.
Instead of having work sessions at a separate time and all that.
Yeah, half an hour.
Not for this.
This
This
is
is
unless we
okay.
do it at 5 o'clock.
Well, even then, yeah, maybe an hour and a half. Because have you looked at how many fees there are? There's a lot. And a lot are missing from that fee schedule, in my opinion.
Well, then do it on the 18th. We're gonna look at it either for.
It's been a big conundrum on this fee structure, I have to say. It really doesn't.
We don't have a very coherent policy, and we need one.
I think in the interest of kind of keeping our time succinct, I would put it before a meeting.
So you want to do 5 o'clock on the 11th?
I see, okay.
All right, we have a motion to set, we have a motion for that. Do you want to just add it for the,
Let's just add it to it.
to the 11th?
Yeah, the 11th of July at 5 PM.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to set up a work session for July 11th to discuss the building valuations and all of these. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Okay. I think we're going to have to extend the meeting because we have 20 minutes now to do our, do you think this executive session is going to go for more than 20 minutes? Nick, Leslie?
I don't personally think that, but I recommend extending the meeting a little bit just so you don't have to come out of executive session and extend it again.
All right. Would somebody like to extend the meeting probably 10 forward, 10?
I'll make the motion so that trustee Marco doesn't have to vote against his own motion. So I can move that we extend the meeting by 30 minutes.
I'll second that.
What, 10:30?
30 minutes from now.
Well,
So till 10:10.
Our
We're going right into
meeting
the executive session. aren't we?
currently going until 10 o'clock, so extending it until 10:30.
No, extend until 10:15.
Okay.
That would be enough.
All right. Do we have a second?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, can we get, next item on the agenda is the executive session.
I move we go into executive session pursuant to CRS 24640224B for purposes of conferencing with the town attorney to receive legal advice on specific legal questions regarding enforcement of offense on town-owned property.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Public comment? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, I'm gonna join the meeting again. My battery was running low. So I'm gonna join the meeting and then you can put us into the room. Come on, why are we not going?
So we should be out of here.
No, we're gonna go into the other room. But my, oh,
Schedule hurt.
So if I could close out of Zoom, we're okay? All right. Time is now 10:12 p.m. And the executive session has been concluded. The participants in the executive session were Trustee Knudsen, Trustee McGinnis, Trustee Smith, Trustee Valentine, Trustee Markle, Trustee Stelter, Interim Director, Interim Town Administrator Klusmeyer, Attorney Cotton Bias, and Mayor Backer. For the record of any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go into executive session occurred during the executive session, or that improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law, I would ask that you state your concerns for the record. All right, hearing none, the next agenda item is adjourned. Oh,
I have a question.
Yes.
We had discussed moving some agenda items to our packet for the next meeting. Do we need a formal motion to do that, or is that?
no,
Okay.
yeah, we
Just
don't need a
making sure.
formal motion for that. It's done. Okay, all right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.